Morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chavez,
Present.
McCann,
Present.
Donovan.
Here.
Vargas is absent. Ortiz,
Present.
Leyva Gonzalez,
Leyva Gonzalez here.
Dillard,
Here.
Mendoza,
Here.
Bush is absent. Frank,
Here.
Montgomery Stepp,
Here.
Elo Rivera, Moreno,
Present.
Whitburn,
Here.
Hall.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and move to non-agenda public comment. This provides 2 minutes for anyone who would like to comment on something that is not on today's agenda, but is within the purview of MTS. Clerk, do we have any non-agenda public comment?
We do. We have several. David Roger, please make your way to the podium.
Thank you, MTS board. I'm here for safety and health issues that MTS is avoiding. My building is next to the Fifth Avenue trolley station. And you have in the tracks there, when Paul was the CEO, they would actually come and clean this out every 30 to 45 days. We're going on about 5 years right now since he passed away, and it's never been done. When it rains, the oil-colored rainbow water goes down the water supply. That's one issue at Fifth Avenue trolley station. The second issue is you have people, and if you listen to your staff, the people that clean up at the station, you have people defecating, sitting on those graded seats. They pull their pants down and defecate through the seat onto the floor, and your staff has to come and clean it up. The problem is it takes your staff 3 to 5 hours to get there, and people with their families come and sit in those same chairs, and MTS just ignores it. I ride public transit every day all over the world, and all I can say is since the current CEO of MTS has been here, MTS has gone backwards. Signs that don't work.
30 seconds left.
It's really incredible. Thank you.
Louise Britt, please make your way to the podium.
Hello, how's everybody doing? I'd like to say hello to my councilman, Ms. Moreno. And it still goes. Anything Mr. Davis didn't tell you, I'll talk to you. But my thing right now is the Sunday schedule. We need to get rid of the Sunday schedule. The Sunday schedule is not good. It's only for people who work from Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That Sunday schedule, it's good. They need to make it a weekend schedule, Saturday and Sunday. Because Sunday, if you got to go to work 5 in the afternoon, you got to sit around your job and get in the night people's way while they're cleaning. That Sunday schedule is not good. They need to be adjusted. And can I ask people, who is here representing Chula Vista? Okay, I've been here 33 years, but I'm from the city of Chicago. What is going on in Chula Vista that the third largest city is always talking about? Third largest city is always talking about Chula Vista, even though you're the 78th largest city in the nation. But the thing is, they need to get rid of that. The Sunday schedule, ladies and gentlemen, is no good. And thank you.
Matthew Snyder, please make your way to the podium.
Good morning, Chair Whitburn and board members. My name is Matthew Snyder, and I'm the business agent for Teamsters Local Union 542. I represent 200 plus of your MTS and TransDev workers at the Copley Park facility here in San Diego, California. This consists of mini fixed drivers, paratransit drivers, reservationists, fuel washers, and technicians. Today, I stand before you with my members behind me, also shop stewards, your employees who continue the conversation that took place during the June 15th MTS board meeting. The meeting ended with the collective understanding that the board would look into possibly bringing Copley Park in-house. This means that the Copley Park location would be directly under the MTS operations. We understand that these things take time, but we want to be assured that the ball is rolling. With that, I do have a few questions for the record. Number one, where are we at with this process? And number two, do we have an ad hoc committee? And if so, who are the members? Next, I want it to be known that Teamsters Local 542 wants to participate in this subcommittee to discuss daily ongoing challenges your employees face. Whether on the road or at the hub, this subcommittee should consist of representatives from MTS, other like industries, SANDAG, city representatives of those in which we service, and labor representatives. With that, I also have a couple questions for the record. One, when will these meetings take place? And number two, who will the committee consist of?
30 seconds left.
In closing, I've repeatedly requested assistance from TransDev and MTS regarding the horrendous bathroom situation. The lack of sanitation, security, and safety is rather alarming and concerning. I would like to hear why these issues have not been resolved by the board. If not discussed today, let's not let another month go by that our members, your employees, have to bear these conditions.
Your time
Let's
has
schedule a
expired.
meeting and make some productive progress. Thank you for your time.
The original DRE, please unmute yourself now.
Yeah, so MTS should be completely ashamed of themselves for offering $10,000 to Miss Figueroa for what she went through. And especially while you're giving $1 million to TransDev, who was like really crappy to their employees. It's like giving them money ain't gonna make that better. But then I was wondering, it's like, so are you guys offering money just to shut people up? I mean, I know you guys don't like it when we call in and things like that. So I'm wondering if you're going to, I mean, do you guys want to offer us $10,000 to go away and just not show up? I mean, it's very disturbing that you will engage in something like that and think that you can just shut somebody up and they'll go away. You know, all while we say that like we care about women and, you know, but you're basically, you know, doing the bidding and backing of Nathan Fletcher, who is, you know, a total coward and, you know, destroyed the county. So you shouldn't be standing behind him and offering money to shut somebody up. You should be standing behind her and saying, we won't allow this to happen here. But instead, you won't do that, right, Whitburn, because you have your own other allegations going on. It just is very, very disturbing that you guys will do that. And
30
then you
seconds
give
left.
a company that is shitty to their employees beyond measure $1 million. So you guys need to rethink what you're doing because people are watching and especially God sees you. So, I mean, you're going to have to answer to him and that ain't going to be pretty the way that you guys are, you know, headed. So change your ways. You can always repent and do things better, but it's up to you.
Your time has expired. Alex Wong, please unmute yourself now.
To maximize ridership, reduce emissions, and reduce traffic, San Diego's airport needs a people mover, not an airport trolley branch. The section between Santa Fe and Middletown is a bottleneck because both the green and blue lines share a track on this section, and the bottleneck would only be worsened with an airport trolley branch. MTS proposes piggybacking that airport trolley branch on top of the existing blue and green lines between Santa Fe and Middletown. Problem is, this section has, at best, a capacity of 20 trains per hour. The blue and green lines need to have 8 trains per hour per direction, or 16 trains combined to provide 7.5-minute frequencies in Mission Valley and University City. Mission Valley and University City are rapidly densifying. Both communities need as much trolley frequency as possible. They need at least 16 trains per hour. That would leave the airport trolley only 4 trains per hour, translating to 15-minute frequencies. That's unacceptable. Mayor Gloria himself said an airport transit link must run extremely frequency, with at least 5-minute frequencies. That's not going to happen with an airport trolley branch. Operating costs are higher with drivers. That's why we need to connect downtown with the airport with a driverless automated people mover. By people mover, I do not mean speculative Tesla tunnels or pod cars. I mean proven high-capacity transit. A free car train would carry 300 people. Think of the APM not just as a people mover, but as light metro, like the SkyTrain in Vancouver, Tokyo's Eureka Mome, Macau's light rail, or Leo's Metro, which runs at 85-second frequencies. The light metro could serve sports, arena, and nav ward because people movers can be used outside of airports and inside
30
dense urban
seconds left.
environments. An APM would run every 4 minutes versus trolley at every 15. The APM would provide fully level boarding and more luggage space than the trolley. The trolley can be challenging for people with luggage. You have to step up to board the train, and there's limited space for luggage because both ends of the car feature narrow aisles accessible only by taking a step up. The APM construction would also not disrupt existing rail service, while the airport trolley branch would. Thank you for your time.
We've taken the first 5 public comments. All additional public comments will be taken during agenda item number 28. That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you very much, Clerk. Thank you for everybody who provided public comment so far. Just a note that I'll be glad to circle back before the next meeting with Local 542 on the questions that you had. All right, let's move on to our consent items, which are items 3 through 18. Clerk, is there any public comment on the consent items?
Phone number ending in, oh, never mind. The original DRA, please unmute yourself now.
Yeah, the minutes are not being well recorded at all. When people are calling in, there's barely anything about that. If there wasn't any kind of recording on video, people wouldn't really know what was being said. So that needs to, the clerk needs to do a better job on that. And then conflict of interest is always, you guys shouldn't be doing anything with that because you always engage in conflicts of interest, especially, trying to pay people off and whatnot. And then the billboard contracts, you should be, again, like I've said before, there's bathrooms that you can provide that have billboards. So you need to look into that. And out front media is one that also partners with another to do that. And then your bus operations training instructor, what are you going to, actually, I'm not sure what I was going to say about that. But anyway, yeah, that's it.
Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
All right, item 4, any conflict of interest code needs to include language regarding political entanglements, not just financial. Item 5, since Caltrans only pretended to care about the Accessible Services Advisory Committee when they were about to get kicked off the board, they really should get the permanent boot. Item 8, $410,000 for replacement of the sign times for the trolley stations. Since those signs never have accurate times, so waste the money. Item 10, $1.1 million for Motorola Solutions to provide radio system services for 4 years for both MTS and NTCD. Something interesting is that the United Nations listed Motorola Solutions as a company whose subsidiary in Israel has been supporting Israeli trespassers on Palestinian land, supplying surveillance and ID equipment for settlements, the wall, and checkpoints directly linked with settlements. If that's true, then I ask that another company be chosen. Item 11, every item of repair request should have photos and comments. Item 13 is over $1.3 million in painting for the worst stack and pack project in San Diego's history. The towering, probably 10-floor, 3-building monstrosity in Grantville, literally connected to the trolley, where fools that move there probably for $800,000 for a little box will never get a night's sleep due to the trolley noise. And that garbage being built because the state gave Affirmed Housing Inc. an almost $12 million grant to be used by millionaire company Graystar. Now MTS has to put a fresh coat of paint on the station to help sell those little 250 box rooms to future suckers.
30 seconds
And item
left.
14, they get another $190,000 for more painting, management. And let's see, item 16, $296,000 for a new elevator because they got to impress for the new Snapdragon station. And item 17, they're going to get $458,000 a year for 13 billboards. While Sean's allowed no MOU with the city of San Diego to make sure the money generated is going to be spent on the people negatively impacted. And also note any future dangerous digital
Your time has
distraction
expired.
billboards.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk, and thank you to the public for those comments. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion.
All right, we have a motion from Member Hall. I'm happy to second the motion. Any discussion on the consent items? Seeing no discussion on the consent items. All those in favor of approving the consent items, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes unanimously. That brings us to our discussion and report items. We'll begin with item number 19, which is the San Ysidro Transit Center Improvement Project update, and we'll invite Dennis Desmond and Beverly Neff to present this item. Please proceed once you get settled in.
Good morning, board. Hi, my name is Beverly Neff and I'm with MTS Planning, and I'll actually be presenting with Zach Hernandez from Sandag. As I'm sure you're all aware, San Ysidro is the busiest port of entry in the United States. Every day, over 100,000 people cross northbound into San Ysidro from Tijuana, and nearly 30,000 of those cross over as pedestrians into our transit center plaza. Unfortunately, this transit center plaza hasn't been updated in over 20 years. So part of this project, we want to get a better understanding of the challenges impacting mobility and connectivity at the San Ysidro Transit Center. Together with Sandag and our consultant WSB, we've identified some of the challenges impacting San Ysidro. And what's been rising to the top are the challenges you see on the screen. The constrained footprint limits capacity and impairs circulation. If you've ever been to San Ysidro, you can see that it's a lot going on in a very tiny little space. There are also various conflict points where pedestrians, vehicles, and transit modes converge, creating connectivity and safety issues. We have the trolley arms coming down every couple minutes. We have the buses and taxis, jitneys, border patrol, emergency vehicles, all looping in and out of the transit center all day. We have the freeway on and off ramps and pedestrians crossing in every direction, all at the same intersection of San Ysidro Boulevard and Rail Court. So with so much going on, the configuration of the space often leads to confusion, and pedestrians crossing the border can easily get lost in the transit center. The main purpose of the current study is to figure out how we can improve and get more out of the existing transit center by addressing those longstanding issues. In general, we know we want a more optimized transit center in terms of mobility, safety, and access. We need to improve the user experience, which today leaves a lot to be desired, and we want to prime the site for better operation in the near future with measures we think can be implemented within 5 to 10 years. We expect to wrap up the planning work around September and quickly get into the environmental phase to advance these improvements as soon as possible. The milestone targets on the screen are tentative, as we still have to develop the study more to understand things like costs and implementation timelines. The project development team is made up of staff from MTS, Sandag, the City of San Diego, and Caltrans. This group has been making progress in some of the key tasks, and we want to share some of those preliminary concepts developed so far. MTS provided the funding to Sandag to work directly with WSP on this project, so I would like to turn it over to the Sandag PM, Zach Hernandez, to discuss the current concepts and the recent outreach.
Thanks, Beverly. And I think Beverly covered the kind of background and context really well. I just have a couple more context pieces, kind of level setting notes, framework for us to kind of understand how we're approaching this study. Some things that I think are important to mention, and it'll help with the next couple slides, things go a little bit more smoother and for you to understand kind of what we're looking at. But the first thing to note is that this is not the first time that the same partner agencies have studied, what could be at San Ysidro. Some folks may remember back in 2014, there was a kind of a comprehensive planning study that was put together for the San Ysidro ITC, or Intermodal Transportation Center. And that basically culminated in, a vision for a future facility that would come online. But I'm bringing that up, and this is probably obvious, but here we are, 2023, almost a decade after that study, and that vision hasn't come to fruition. And with the exception of, the trolley renewal project, which improved the platforms out there, there hasn't really been, if any, very much improvement at the station, like Beverly also kind of pointed out. But I bring that up to kind of make a distinction in terms of our approach that we're taking this time, with that as kind of context and somewhat of a lesson learned, and also acknowledging that we'd like to make improvements sooner rather than later. We're taking a really strategic approach this time. And by that, I mean, we're still trying to answer the question, how do we improve? How do we get more out of the existing transit center? all those great things, but can we do so in a way that limits where and if possible impacts to private property? And by virtue of minimizing those impacts and the often long litigious process that comes with them, having that much of a shorter distance to the finish line, actually getting a project constructed. So for the past year with this work, that's really been kind of guiding our thinking as a project development team, guiding the conversations that we've been having with stakeholders. And a result of that work that we're going to be presenting today is basically 3 unique station improvement concepts. And the way to think about these is that each of these concepts all are going to have their own pros and cons and trade-offs, obviously. But across the board, they're all going to address the main goals that Beverly kind of laid out, the issues at the station, just in different ways. A key component to all of them across the board is going to be, especially from a design perspective, adding a 3rd terminus track for the Blue Line trolley itself. It's been a longstanding operational goal for MTS, obviously, provides capacity, operational flexibility. But in order to do that, we know we can't just try to squeeze a 3rd terminus track in exactly where they land today. That would in fact probably exacerbate some of the issues that Beverly laid out that you see on the last slide. But overall, these layouts, these concepts are kind of predicated first on how do you tackle that first big piece of infrastructure? What do we do with the trolley? And then from there, the rest of the design components kind of cascade. But all these concepts across the board, and you'll see this after I stop blabbing and just get into the fun stuff, is that all of them are going to add that 3rd terminus track for the trolley. All of them are going to add capacity MTS bus space for MTS transit service. They're also all going to accommodate to different degrees some of the must-haves that we heard from the federal government, General Services Administration, Customs and Border Protection, Border Patrol, et cetera. We've had several conversations with them even early on, and they've laid out a couple of things that are somewhat must-haves for them. They're key stakeholders, also property owners at this site. So that's important to note. There won't be enough time to go into every single detail, but just wanted to lay out that kind of framework so we can understand what we're seeing in the next few slides. Thanks. Yeah, with this first one, this is what we've been calling so far Concept A. This is how we'll kick off the discussion, but this basically says, yes, there's a way to add a 3rd terminus track. One way you might approach that is shifting some of the approach tracking of the Blue Line itself and where it terminates to the east. So this is essentially adjacent to abutting that tall retaining wall that you see that holds up the freight bluff to the east, kind of that tannish color. And then to the west of where the trolley would terminate, right on Rail Court, would be the existing McDonald's building, the private property right there that you see kind of in white. But under this scenario, just want to point out a couple things. Don't get too caught up with all the lines on the map, the colors, et cetera. The next couple slides will point out a little bit more detail. But again, adding a 3rd terminus track, yes, it's possible. One way to do that would be to move the tracks to the east under this scenario, keeping the trolley platform at grade, so ground level. So that's kind of important. The next slide, thanks. Yeah, one thing to point out here, and like I mentioned, all of them are going to accommodate a 3rd terminus track. All of them accommodate additional bus space. If we scan our eyes a little bit to the south, what we notice is that under this scenario, the bus loop, as we know it today, is going to require a widening in order to accommodate additional bus space. And these bus spaces, especially for MTS transit service, are going to have to be big enough to accommodate everything up from a 60-foot articulated bus down to whatever else, a 40-foot, et cetera. Another thing to point out here is that the bus loop or the guitar, the banjo, whatever you call it, under this scenario becomes the new home for commercial bus operations, Greyhound, International Bus Lines, Tufesa, the like, et cetera. The blue elements that you see here are what I mentioned a moment ago, some of the must-haves from the federal government's perspective. A really key one to keep in mind is that vehicle access for federal vehicles, but also as a fire lane, also as MTS security and maintenance crews on Rail Court is something that we're maintaining throughout all these concepts. So just keep that in mind. That's in the blue is kind of the must-have for them there. And scanning back down to the bus loop, you see this also includes a kind of a formalization of parking that right now is occurring in the center island of that bus loop, kind of causing some inefficiency and some congestion. And also at red curb that, Homeland Security vehicles just kind of find an open spot on red curb and just use that kind of willy-nilly. This would be formalizing that, streamlining it so it's more intuitive, it's more efficient. And just to kind of give you a heads up about a quick section that we have later on, the dark gray that you see on San Ysidro Boulevard itself, this is going to be another key element that I'll talk about in a moment. But we'll kind of lay out some thinking about how to best maximize the use of that space too. Thanks. And so this next concept, Concept B, is somewhat similar to Concept A. This is saying you can add a 3rd terminus track. One way to go about it would be moving again the approach tracking and the terminus itself to the east. So again, next to the freight bluff itself, behind the McDonald's building. But this time an elevated terminus structure, so above ground, above grade. The first thing that jumps out here is obviously you need really robust vertical access infrastructure, stairs, ramps, elevators, et cetera. At this point in time, the level of detail that we've gotten to is making some general assumptions about where the footprint of that infrastructure would be. But that's really the key thing for this concept. Obviously, elevating the structure, you provide additional space at ground level to reprogram, to better utilize, to maximize. But you need to get people, the thousands of people who are connecting to the trolley, up to the trolley and back down. So that infrastructure for this particular concept is going to be a key thing. If we go to the next slide. Yeah, a little bit easier to see this from a two-dimensional lens, but similar to concept A, the bus loop gets broadened, gets widened, expanded. You accommodate the bus bays for MTS service, you accommodate parking for the federal vehicles for MTS, et cetera. You accommodate commercial bus bays and a pull-in, pull-out configuration. With all this stuff, this is kind of like what we've been mulling over as a project development team with experts that we've contracted through WSP. Engineers from their team and internally at Sandag have kind of double checked or looked at this to a degree and said, feasibly, this could work. You provide operational flow, et cetera. But just to call out a couple of things in concept B, the footprint of the vertical access, the stairs, the elevators, the ramps, that sort of thing, that'll be a key piece for this concept. But underneath the trolley platform is really kind of open for discussion still. This is still early conceptual planning, but what we're excited about is freeing up some space that right now is a really precious commodity. And I'll talk about in a little bit some ideas for what types of services, what types of use of curb space down there could look like. We can go to the next one. Concept C, this one's kind of unique in that instead of moving the trolley to the east, this would be roughly using the existing alignment, just elevating some of the approach tracking and the terminus itself. So definitely pros and cons with all of these trade-offs with all of these, but just a couple of things to point out. One thing that we noted even early on is that in order to make something like this happen, it would probably entail temporary, but likely pretty long shutdown of the Blue Line service itself, which is not an easy pill to swallow. But I guess some of the things to also point out in terms of the design benefits to this would be, potentially with some creative engineering and design, you could probably connect the pedestrian bridge that currently connects east and west over the freeway to this elevated structure, which would be kind of cool. But like I said, today, just trying to get you all familiar with the different concepts, the general feel for them, not trying to dive into too much detail, but just wanted to point out those important things. And then, yeah, from this 2D, you can see we're gonna need some footprint to provide stairs, ramps, elevators, et cetera. So this will be pretty tricky from an engineering perspective, not just on, how to get people up to the trolley platform, but also how to structure the guideway up and over San Ysidro Boulevard itself. So you'd likely need what they call straddle bents going over on either side of San Ysidro Boulevard. That infrastructure has a sizable footprint, so you'll probably still impact private right-of-way to a somewhat of a degree. But yeah, just to point out a couple of things there. We could go to the next one. So yeah, those last slides hopefully tried to, tackle the first couple of questions. What do you do with the trolley? What does the bus loop look like? What does that configuration look like? To me, this next section is kind of one of the more exciting pieces. What we've talked about so far is that, yes, what's happening south of that intersection with rail court, the bus loop itself is really important. What do you do with the trolley? What do you do with the buses? But this section, this 1/10 of a mile jog of San Ysidro Boulevard today is such a choke point, and it's really not serving the station efficiently. And what we've been looking at with all these scenarios, proposing moving some of that tracking, which right now hugs this 1/10 of a mile jog, provides us opportunity to repurpose that width for better service, for better operations. One element that we're going to keep advancing and that we really think provides a lot of benefit is a bus-only lane. We want to prioritize transit, obviously, for this transit center. In the southbound direction, this provides transit buses, transit service to get around, to get through what is right now a lot of queuing that happens because people are trying to make that right turn to get back onto the freeway, et cetera. A lot of congestion happening here. When we move the trolley, we're providing that additional space in order to do that. This scenario, and you could click ahead. Yeah, thank you. This scenario provides for a bus only lane in the southbound direction, but also a bidirectional center running bike lane. Just an idea that we've been kind of mulling over and assessing to a degree. But under this scenario, you'd have kind of a streamlined connection to where right now the border to Bayshore Bikeway, the class 2 elements of that are anticipated to basically terminate. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see that really big intersection. That's Bayer, Camino del Plaza, and San Ysidro Boulevard. Right there, the class 2 elements of the border to Bayshore Bikeway would end, and then from there south, it would be essentially Sharrows. So under this scenario, we provide dedicated guideway for that bike usage as well. So this kind of element to this is something that I'm really excited about. Yes, I'm excited about adding capacity for the trolley. Yes, I'm excited about adding capacity for MTS bus service. But I think over the past year, talking to different stakeholders, obviously having experience with the site, one thing that we know is that there's a lot of demand that is more than just the trolley, more than just the buses. There's a lot of east-west, especially pedestrian movement to and from the east side of this port of entry to the west side of the port of entry to the businesses and shops and Las Americas outlets to the west side, but also built up latent demand for north-south movement up and through the business community and San Ysidro Boulevard itself. One thing that we're doing with all these concepts is freeing up space, tapping into non-existing space today for services that don't exist today, perhaps because there isn't space to stage it. So what we're looking at on screen is utilizing some of that new width of San Ysidro Boulevard for curb opportunities, what we've been calling flex curb space. And these are things that could be, spec'd and sized to provide, staging capacity for commercial buses, depending on the peak periods of demand, all the way down to, the neighborhood electric vehicles that are operating downtown and PB now and Oceanside, et cetera. Those types of things, all the way down to micromobility services. But the key thing here is that San Ysidro Boulevard becomes a functioning component of the transit center itself. So it's not just about the bus loop, it's not just about the trolley. Those are good, continue to be the prominent features. But San Ysidro Boulevard itself, with this new width and repurposing it, provides even more services that, like I said, maybe today they don't exist because there's no space. And this other scenario that we've been looking at, again, there's different amalgamations to all of this. This is still conceptual planning work, but another way to look at it would be still accommodating a southbound bus only lane. But under this scenario, you can go ahead and click the next one. This would be accommodating a bidirectional bike lane and a pedestrian kind of promenade or esplanade type of space to the east. So instead of having it center running, this is moving the bike lane to the east. And so there's different trade-offs with all this. I just kind of want to walk through this kind of briefly, but no, it's perfect. But yeah, again, under all these scenarios, what we really are trying to do is tap into the opportunities for San Ysidro Boulevard itself to play an active role in how we serve the public at the space. Thank you. And then for those who've been kind of have a keen eye, you probably noticed there's kind of like this grayish blob that we've been showing in the last couple diagrams. And so far what we've tried to hone in on is how do we maximize that space in particular to bring about kind of a placemaking, a softening of the urban design, the urban form that we have down there, which right now is really dominated by cars, by auto-oriented kind of development. It's on the ground level kind of experience, a kind of a harsh environment to walk through. There's a lot of concrete, a lot of asphalt, a lot of steel. And one opportunity to kind of shift the center of gravity, away from just the bus loop and the trolley space and provide more of a pleasant experience, more of a placemaking experience throughout San Ysidro Boulevard, especially for this 1/10 of a mile jog, is to look at that as a potential public plaza. These photos, I think, are from LA, San Francisco, New York, but these are, communities that have found a way to utilize that space, maximize that space to provide better experience for people on the ground, for pedestrians. No, that's fine, yeah. So yeah, I'll kind of pivot and kind of depart from the design kind of concept aspects of this, and just before we wrap up, leave you with a couple things about outreach. As you see on the screen, we've been trying to get out there, do presentations, hold briefings, stakeholder meetings, et cetera. Trying to meet with folks on more of an intimate basis to really hear them out. Share obviously what our thinking is, but hear from them in terms of their experience. A lot of these folks have been around for years and they have a very intimate knowledge of the space. So this has been really, really fruitful, and this is not by any means the end all be all, and there's going to be a lot more outreach to come. But if we go to the next slide, one activity that we did have active from early March to early April was kind of a quick user experience survey. We wanted to just take a pulse of how, San Ysidro Transit Center users are experiencing the space. What services are they connecting to there? How do they feel when they move through the space, et cetera? Wasn't meant necessarily to be a big, robust, empirical source of data, travel behavior, and all that stuff. This is just taking a pulse. But just a couple of highlights from this slide, you can see over 3/4 of folks who responded used some form of public transit to either get to or depart from the transit center. Close to 30% of the folks who responded said they felt less than comfortable moving around the space, navigating the transit center. When you exclude or you filter out the folks who are exclusively using the trolley, that number jumps up quite a bit to 43%. So just a couple of things to point out there. And then we also asked folks to, click and drag and to prioritize the station elements in terms of the importance to them. Unsurprisingly, the trolley ranked, 62% of folks ranked that number one. That was the most important to them, and it'll continue to be, that's for sure. The bus service was 9% of folks responded that the bus service was their number one ranked element in terms of importance. 7% of folks responded saying that bathrooms was their first ranked element in terms of importance, and then 7% also reported that station amenities, waiting areas, benches, shading, lighting, all that kind of stuff was their first answer. Yeah, at this point, I guess just to kind of give a note about what's to come. Right now, we're trying to basically package all this information that you just saw today in a very streamlined, very intuitive way, post that online, and accompany the release of kind of what we're calling draft station improvement concepts with workshops, with webinars, et cetera, to really walk people through it and really get their feedback, have them pick it apart, sit with it on their own time, all that kind of stuff. But generally, we're trying to wrap this up. I don't know if Beverly mentioned this, but hopefully by before the end of this year, sometime around September, October is the goal. But yeah, this is more or less where we are today. And with that, I'll stop and ask if anybody has questions.
If I could highlight something for the board, concept C requires the shutdown of the trolley at the border. And that's not going to be 2 months, it's going to be 2 or 3 years. So given that the blue line is so important and the cross-border transit options are so important, I think that's something that needs to be heavily weighed when we're looking at the various concepts. The big thing for us in all three concepts is getting us out of the crossing at San Ysidro Boulevard, where there's huge pedestrian crossings and everything else. And so getting us out of that kind of situation where we're at grade and we're actually impeding movement of people would be the highlight of this for us. And then giving something nice to the community in San Ysidro, especially the things that Zach was talking about with regard to improving other options for getting to the border with bikes and pedestrian. That's really crucial. So lots of things to weigh.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the update. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, it's truth. According to this item, of the people coming from the border, only 6.9% at a maximum use public transit. For all the concept diagrams, buses and cars sharing the same lanes is inefficient and would be better if the buses had a back route or if there was another lane where cars could get around the buses more easily. Concept B, I don't support as stairways, elevators, and ramps just add to transit time, bring directional confusion, and require more directional signs. Old Town is a great example of an annoying and confusing design. And concept C's taken all the worst elements, every transportation mode sharing the road, waste of time, stairs and elevators, the bus is too close to the MTS parking, possibly causing congestion, pedestrians having to wait even longer to use the crosswalks because the trolley's coming or going, and more. Elevators are also another recurring bill to be taken into consideration. This concept C is the epitome of a problem-filled design. The San Ysidro Boulevard concept, the center running bike lane is one of the worst design concepts I've ever seen. People will be killed. Bicyclists being allowed to ride on the sidewalk makes more sense. And buses should also never be in the middle. It's actually safer for pedestrians if buses are closer to the sidewalks than cars because they're less frequent than cars and travel at slower speeds. By the way, the little cartoon pictures of sidewalks, cars, buses, and bikes is a complete plagiarization of the federal U.S. Department of Transportation's complete streets designs. The plaza concept design, I agree
30
with.
seconds left.
And food stalls could be added into the concept. Overall, I always recommend more directional signs everywhere with Spanish translation, of course. Lastly, I noticed in the stakeholder and community outreach dates that 0 community events were held, while a number of developers were reached. Sandag was willy-nilly with caring what the public thinks, as usual. Maybe that's why they think shutting down the blue line for 2 years makes sense. It doesn't. That's very
Your
foolish.
time has expired.
Man, you guys.
The original DRA, please unmute yourself now.
Yeah. I don't even know why we're doing anything that's going to help Mexico when they're just, dumping their sewage into the water and we're like, let's claim an emergency. Anyway, bet you that would stop real quick if you shut down the trolley for quite a while. Anywho, or the border. But your guys' whole, I love when you ask stakeholders and none of those people probably ride this kind of transit. It's good. And then you're asking the people to 1 through 4, tell us what your first thing is you want. You don't just openly let them, tell you. And putting bikes in the middle of cars and a bus, you guys already in the city have litigation against, bikes being hit, even pedestrians. So, I mean, when you engage in that, you're just asking for more trouble. And then I find it interesting that you're we're going to have these extra lanes that so if EV vehicles, are there, we can let them drive on it, but not the gas ones, and we'll incentivize people in that way to, change their way of living and driving and go into these, lithium battery bombs. So it's good. And then, shoot, what was I going to say? There was something else. I'm just going to wait until I think about it because I'm not positive. Oh yeah. So
30
if you guys
seconds
are going to
left.
be building up on a platform, I mean, because you guys have to retrofit all of these hospitals, right? Because for earthquakes, is that going to be safe to be, up like that? Is it going to be earthquake safe? So I'm just wondering. So just make sure that it is if you do that. But regardless, everything you do is ridiculous because it's all part of the UN agenda. So you're doing very good. Very,
Your
very
time has
good.
expired. That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. We will now open board discussion on this item, beginning with Member Moreno.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying my best not to geek out on this. This is very exciting. First and foremost, I want to thank Ms. Neff and Mr. Hernandez for all the work and for the presentation that you guys have done on this project. I really like the San Ysidro Boulevard concept. That's definitely something that I wasn't expecting. The plaza, the potential bike opportunities also is amazing. The one thing that I was just talking to my colleague, and the one thing that I think we should definitely keep into consideration when we're talking about concepts is the bathroom component. The board has been, you don't know this, Zach, but the board has been, or you might, has been talking at length about having bathrooms for our customers. And as a person who travels into Tijuana almost on a weekly basis, this is something that I think is very important to our riders. I also want to acknowledge our staff for your work on the user experience survey for the project. My understanding is that you were actually out there surveying people, which I think speaks to the response that we got, right? And I think it's very imperative that we get feedback from people who actually are utilizing the public transit, particularly within the San Ysidro area, because I think their opinion is how we're going to provide the best service, and that should really matter to us. And we see from the results, a staggering 62% of respondents ranked access to the trolley as their first priority. And I want to remind the board and everybody listening that the San Ysidro Port of Entry is the biggest border land crossing in the Western Hemisphere, in the world. And it's only going to get busier, right, in the next 40 years. And part of this planning is not what's happening right now, It's about what's going to happen in the future. And just to give you guys an idea of how busy it is, I like to compare this trolley station to the Comic-Con, which we just had this past weekend. More people cross the San Ysidro, more people get on the San Ysidro trolley at that San Ysidro station than all of Comic-Con on all 4 days. So these are our customers. It's the meat and potatoes of MTS. So, and obviously with the continuing growth of Tijuana, and the recent San Ysidro Port of Entry improvements, I think this crossing is set to get even busier in the future. And the San Ysidro Mobility Hub is going to be a critical piece to ensure efficiency and cross-border mobility. And our focus is hopefully getting a lot of these folks out of their cars and into our trolleys. One of the concerns that's usually brought up when discussing the San Ysidro Mobility Hub project is the lack of space. Councilmember Dillard and I had a very enlightening conversation a few months ago. And, you know, I'm just going to bring it up. UCSD didn't have the space when they expanded the Blue Line, right? We elevated the tracks. And I thought that was a very good solution. I think if we could solve an issue of lack of space in wealthier communities north of the 8, then we certainly can be innovative and think outside of the box when we're talking about improving our busiest trolley station. And so for those reasons, I personally feel that concept B is the best option. I'm not strung onto it, but just to give some feedback to our staff, I think concept B, yes, it's going to be really difficult, but I often tell staff in the city of San Ysidro, the city of San Diego, city of San Ysidro, here I go. I'm going to start. Whoa, right? In the city of La Jolla and the city of San Ysidro. I'll run for mayor, right? No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Just because it's difficult doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, right? That's what we should be clamoring for. That's what we should be salivating. There are major international ports, airports, rail stations that have gone through major shifts, right? And have had to shut down. We're going through that right now on La Media, right? The second most important commercial crossing of the nation. We have 4,000 trucks going down an agricultural road. City of San Diego got money, about $46 million to get that project closed. And guess what? We have to close the street. We have to do it, right? And so, and to jump on the conversation about money, I've been in this industry now for 13 years, right? I'm not naive. MTS is not going to have to foot the bill. It's not just an MTS issue, right? This is an international, global issue. We need to get state money. We need to get federal money. But I do want to point out that this was absolutely a lost opportunity for MTS the past 15 years. With so much federal infrastructure money coming through, we could have been breaking ground right now on this very project. So we absolutely will need Sandag to champion it. We absolutely will need MTS to champion it. We absolutely will need the D8 rep to champion it, right? Whether it be me or the next one, but I also will need my fellow board members to champion this project. So with that, I'm definitely looking forward to working with the community. I'm looking forward to working with labor. I'm looking forward to working with the board, with staff, to see these projects, these major projects come to fruition. We have been watching other cities eat our lunch when it comes to infrastructure. We are San Diego County. You guys like that? San Diego County. We're San Diego County, right? We are, you know, people all over the world are coming to visit us, our family members, us enjoying just our whole region. I think this is a very imperative program. It's transformative. And I'm just really excited to have this come to the board. And I'm done geeking out. Thank you, you guys. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Moreno. Let's hear from Member Hall and Member Chavez and Member Elo Rivera. Member Hall.
So that you're saying you're for it. Yeah, you're excited about it. That's nice. Just a couple of quick questions, if you could. Could you go back to the slides? Go to slide B, the one that Vivian liked. How are we planning on, first of all, are we doing any cost estimators yet, or is it just?
We've started to kind of scratch at the surface in terms of, rough order of magnitude. What would this cost from an infrastructure perspective? Elevated structures are pretty costly, as you probably know, but we don't have a definitive or at least, planning level cost estimate developed quite yet that we're, packaging and sharing publicly. It's just kind of in development.
Because technically, I mean, obviously, if you're elevating it, it's going to be going a little bit higher, put it mildly. And I'm just thinking these things could be talking us out of it without us. So in other words, if we are not put pricing as we go, we may be wasting our time, is all I'm trying to say. On the bus only lane, have we done, again, is that concept only, or are we doing traffic studies at the same time? Or is it?
Yeah, so the nature of this work so far has been, the conceptual level look at things, just at the very high level. What does the general bones, the new structure of the transit center, what could it look like? What things even fit? That's why we've had, engineers weigh in even in this early stage. Is it even feasible? Do we have the geometry out there to make it work? The quick answer for all these concepts is yes. They all have their varying degrees of, implementation feasibility. I know it's a lot of jargon, but how easy is it going to be to build it, basically? But yeah, the nature of this has been conceptual. We're going to try to dive as quickly as possible into the more detailed engineering and design work to answer more questions.
Okay. That's just all I'm trying to say. I have grand plans and literally price yourself out of the market before you even start. And I just don't want us to get literally down the wrong tracks.
If I may, one thing I wanted to mention about concept A versus concept B, cost wise, is although concept B at first glance seems way more expensive because we have to elevate it, and it's probably true. Concept A is still going to have its own costs. There are a lot of grade variations in the area, so it would still require a lot of grading. So even the at-grade station would still have a high expense.
And then the third item real quick is trolley into Mexico. How does that go into this drawing?
Yeah, so again, kind of like to the nature of this study, this being kind of like our take on what do we think we could feasibly do in the near term. While we're not incorporating directly a future, cross-border trolley alignment, we're still trying to see what's feasible. How do we, bring substantive impact and improvement to the station? But that's not preclusive for something bigger and better to come along necessarily. But again, just tying it back to the nature of the study, the spirit of the study is how do we improve what's out there today? Yeah, but trying not to be preclusive.
I just want to make sure again, and I apologize for this, but just want to make sure again that we're planning for the future. I don't want to stick another McDonald's, if you know what I mean, right at the end of it and have to work our way around that too. So I appreciate that. Sorry to take so long.
Thank you, Member Hall. We'll go to Member Chavez and then Member Elo Rivera.
Thank you for all the hard work and for bringing this back. I could not agree more than I do right now with Member Moreno. I think growing up as a binational and being part of that floating population of the most transited border in the world, I just want to point out that let's be mindful about option C. I think that's not even an option. When Sharon mentioned that it was almost 2 or 3 years, you mentioned, it's going to kill the main artery of the Blue Line. We have a floating population at around 200,000 people coming to work every single day, northbound, and going back southbound every single day. And option B for me, the elevated version, is the most feasible as well. You have to be mindful that also if you talked to the people, the users, and maybe had focus groups, you would understand that there are no available options for bathrooms in San Ysidro because they only use it for customers. And sometimes not even then. Stores just don't have bathrooms because you have this huge population of people coming over and they're looking sometimes for bathrooms. Keep in mind, they just done a wait time to cross for 3 or 4 hours, right? And so I would strongly encourage thinking about bathrooms. I would recommend you seek it out between the McDonald's and the Customs and Border Protection land port of entry, the pedestrian port of entry. There's a huge little plaza right there that bathrooms would be great before they get on the trolley. And coming back from work, they can use them. Also, I want to be very mindful that San Ysidro is a nonstop, ongoing, 24/7. Yes, crossing. Someone said that, but also it's a pickup and drop off zone. So be very mindful because all the arteries, all the cars are picking up relatives. They're dropping off relatives. They're just, it's nonstop. If you stand there, you could see in the back of the McDonald's, that little closed street, they're always dropping off people, picking up people. If right now, it's only reserved for buses and Customs and Border Protection agents. The little, it's a little like little roundabout next to the trolley on the left. But I would really encourage, and I really appreciate all the time that went into this, but I would really encourage that at least for a week, you tour those streets, because rush hour at 6 p.m., the traffic is incredible. I'm foreseeing a bit of accidents, maybe in bike lanes, because it's just so packed. The artery is just congested. So bathrooms, yes. Option B, yes. I would recommend that. I'll go with you. I mean, I go almost every other day to Tijuana. I grew up, taking the trolley, crossing, so I know this pretty well. And I would highly recommend the bathrooms. Please incorporate that. That is just vital, because anywhere you can't use the bathrooms unless you're either a customer or, there's not available, not even for customers. So I strongly support option B, and I would love to go down with you guys and maybe show you the points that I'm mentioning. And also, one last thing before I end this. Ped West is opening a few hours now. So Ped West is the new land border crossing that a few years ago was open for pedestrians on the right. So it's going to be opening right now. I think it's from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. because they're having the CBP One app, all the humanitarian visas that they're processing through there. But there's possible talks about opening it after 4 to maybe 11 or 12 a.m. For all the people that are going southbound back from work. So I would just highly recommend that you always be mindful and incorporate more routes during rush hour, maybe to Ped West for connections, right? In the morning, just bus services, some kind of shuttle, something, so we don't have to make the people walk this huge bridge to get over. I mean, they're waiting 3 or 4 hours to get across, and then 30, 40 minutes to cross the bridge to get trolley. Just be mindful of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Chavez. Member Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation here. I really appreciate all the work. Thank you, Councilmember Moreno, for your engagement on this and the comments that you made. Really, really excited to see what's going into this. There's one question that I had, because I would agree that shutting down the station for multiple years would be a huge problem. And this might be a stupid question. Can there not be a temporary station very nearby in the interim?
Yeah, did you want to go?
So we have looked at options for a temporary station in that pedestrian plaza that we highlighted earlier, but the elevation for the tracks would have to start much before that. So there really isn't a good location for a temporary location for the trolley. So we would have to figure out how to handle it operationally with buses, which would be a very, very, very heavy task. But we would just have to shuttle people to the buyer trolley, which is the closest trolley station.
Got it. Okay. That's obviously that's a lot. It probably was a stupid question, but I was wondering. Not the first one I've asked, not the last one either. Just a few things I wanted to highlight here. Obviously been tracking this at Sandag as well. Lots of them said about how important this is for the region, for our transit system. the more efficient and effective and welcoming that this space is, the more likely that folks are going to want to utilize public transportation coming and going to the border. Not to mention the prioritization that I agree with Councilmember Moreno that we should provide to those folks who ride every day. We oftentimes take them for granted, and we should not. A couple things that I want to highlight. I think the bus only lane could be a real win. The flex curb opportunities, and also the public space, including restrooms, as has been highlighted. That would be really, really important for users of the system, and I think also play a role in encouraging more folks to want to get on. Again, a win for those who are currently using, and a draw to those who are not yet already. A couple things that I do want to ask about in terms of engagement here. One is if any outreach has been done. Let me first say thank you for doing the outreach that you've done, especially the user experience engagement. I think that's really important. I'm curious to what extent different times of day that engagement occurred at different times of day. I think about a lot of the students that I used to talk to at City College, who depend on the trolley to get to school. They oftentimes ride super early in the morning. You've got other folks coming through at different times of day, different needs, different wants. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so definitely we've SANAG, we conduct surveys at the border. Most recently we had a pretty comprehensive survey that was finalized in 2019, 2020, but it was basically a deep dive into all the travel behavior, across the border. A major trip purpose for people crossing is school. Work, obviously a huge percentage, shopping is a huge draw. But specifically on like how we're trying to cover all of our bases. The station design so far, has been kind of conceptual, high level. How do we make everything fit? But as we've been doing outreach and reaching out to more folks, trying to be proactive about it, more and more people, and I think even Councilmember Moreno brought this up super early on, but was reaching out to like the school district. There's tons of people who live in Tijuana, have their kids go to school on the side of the border. That's a huge, population that's not really well served right now with just the infrastructure that we have. But as we go, I think maybe to your point, one kind of like follow-up activity that I see coming out of all this work is tapping into much more outreach to get a sense of if there were, additional bus service, additional route, if there was a rapid service, if there was flexible fleet, neighborhood electric kind of district level shuttles, where should they serve? What types of, users should they serve? That's all stuff that we're looking to get into pretty soon.
Got it. Thank you for that. I would definitely encourage some connecting with the community colleges. I am most familiar with City College, but I would imagine there'd be some great input from Southwestern College students as well. And the last thing, again, I think Councilmember Moreno made the prescient point that we should only anticipate the usage of this area to grow. We know that a lot of folks are moving to Tijuana as San Diego becomes more and more expensive. And this cross-border reality that so many folks are already and have been existing within, I think is likely to expand over the years. And we certainly want to make sure as many folks as possible are using transit rather than driving. So thank you again for all the work on this. Appreciate this item coming. Chair.
Thank you, Member Elo Rivera. Member Chavez, you had one additional comment.
Yes. Additionally, I would highly recommend, if possible, doing this work at night, just because of the high density and traffic that we have right now. I think even closing one street would be chaos at the border. And if you don't believe me, just at around 6 p.m. on a Friday, on your maps, put Tijuana as an address, and you'll see the 3 or 4 hour and all the arteries clogged around it. So, food for thought.
Chair, if I could. I just wanted to let you know you couldn't be better served than by our senior planner, Beverly Neff, on this project. She's as passionate about it as you are. Beverly, where did you grow up?
I actually did grow up in Tijuana. So I grew up in President Space, and I moved over here when I started grade school. I moved over here, but I've lived in South Bay my entire life, and I'm very, very familiar with this transit center.
I had to call you out, Beverly. She is very passionate about this project.
Very good. Thank you very much to the board. Great discussion. Thank you for the presentation. Seeing no further discussion, we'll move on to item number 20, which is the State of California budget regarding transportation funding. And Sharon Cooney and Julia Tour will provide this presentation.
So I sent the board members, all of you should have received, except perhaps some of the alternates, the memo that was on the final state budget approval. But what I wanted Julia to do is kind of really get into a deep dive on it right now. And that way you can all kind of talk through it. Ultimately, this will be something that the Budget Development Committee, hopefully in September, and I believe we've already scheduled that, will take up on your behalf, but getting some feedback from you now would be helpful in that process as well. So go ahead.
Thanks, Sharon. Good morning, board. So like Sharon mentioned, I'll be reviewing the transit funding portion that was included in the passage of the state budget. So great news. The transit will be receiving about $5.1 billion over FY24 to 27. The funding is going to flow through a couple different capital programs, but the key piece of this here is that we will have the flexibility to use this funding towards operations. Although there are, that will be contingent upon specific accountability and reform requirements. So we are estimating to receive up to $290 million over these 4 fiscal years. And I'll note that the majority of the funding will be delivered in the first 2 fiscal years. So as Sharon mentioned, we'll be meeting with the Budget Development Committee in September to further discuss the spending plan. So with the Budget Act, the restoration of $2 billion for Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, or TIRCP, return that program to $4 billion for FY24 and FY25. The second piece of this is the $1.1 billion over 4 years for the Zero Emission Transit Capital Program. Both of these programs are going to flow to transit agencies on a formula basis through population or revenue-based distribution. And again, these will include 100% flexibility to use for operations purposes. I will note here that MTS has specifically been called out in statute that we will receive this money directly. Other transit agencies, funds will be allocated to the Regional Transportation Planning Agency for operator funding distribution. Then SB 125. So that is the transportation budget trailer bill. So this did a few things, one of which it instituted the accountability and reform requirements like as a baseline for agencies to be able to access funding included in the budget bill. It also extended the statutory relief measures, which took effect during COVID, and it extended those through FY26. And then additionally is the Transit Transformation Task Force that will be created by CalSTA. So to receive an allocation of this funding, MTS will be required to submit a short-term financial plan to CalSTA in basically detailing our immediate service retention that will be consistent with the guidelines that are developed and adopted by CalSTA. These guidelines are still being drafted. We're expecting them to be introduced later on this summer, and we're working closely with the California Transit Association and with CalSTA prior to those guidelines being finalized. So there's a lot of information here, but this kind of highlights the statutory relief measures that are being extended, and some of which you've heard before, which is the suspension of the TDA fare box recovery requirements, or the extension of the suspension on financial penalties associated with the STA program with operating cost per revenue hour exceeding operating cost per revenue vehicle. So those are some of the relief measures that are going to be extended through FY26. And additionally, the trailer bill has created this Transit Transformation Task Force. And that task force is going to look at a lot of those extensions that took place and how it can be revamped and find ways to improve transit ridership, improve the transit experience, and prepare and submit a report of those findings and other policy recommendations by October 2025, prior to those statutory exemptions expiring. And this task force will include a number of representatives, but one of which will include transit operators. So the California Transit Association, as an advocacy organization, will be participating, and we will also solicit our interest in participation as well. So next steps, again, we'll be working closely with California Transit Association and CalSTA on the required guidelines to access this funding, which should be taking place over the next month or so. And then we will hold our Budget Development Committee meeting in September to discuss a potential funding plan. And then by the end of this year, we will be required to submit all of our documentation to CalSTA in order for us to have access to this funding.
If I could just wrap up, Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp had been adamant about getting this task force back up and running for the TDA reform. So we're really glad to see that as part of this whole decision-making. I'm likely to be appointed the chair of the California Transit Association in November, so I will most likely be on that committee. So.
Very good. Thank you for that update. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Hey, it's truth. MTS was directly called out. That's good. It should have been called out for something bad, like not getting any money, having people not pay. That would have been better. The state budget includes $5.1 billion for transportation between 2024 and 2027. MTS is looking to get $290 million over the next 4 years. That's a lot of debt. That's what I hear. We got $1.1 billion in transit funding for the newly created zero emission transit capital program. That means more toxic, unsustainable, and flammable lithium battery buses and trolleys, as well as the charging infrastructure that almost nobody uses. Here's information from the county's regional decarbonization framework about what is entailed by getting lithium for the batteries. Quote, environmental considerations are releasing lithium into the atmosphere, ecosystem damage, and the lack of recycling of lithium batteries, end quote. Anyone pushing forward these electric vehicles is destroying the planet. And who's ever doing this to get money from the state is profiting off the destruction of the environment. You guys better not pass it. I'm going to call you earth destroyers. SB 125 creates a new state transit transformation task force with all kinds of government officials, colleges, and of course, stakeholders on it. That means the state government continues to grow in
30
size.
seconds left.
And of course, if MTS and others don't do what they're told, then they won't get the money. Pay to play. And it's the same scenario everywhere, just like at Sandag and just like at every city council. A lot of state puppets in the way of local control. It says MTS still won't be penalized for not meeting the specified fixed percentages of the budget from passenger fares. And, that means the state's propping up public transit systems they know are financial failures. There is fraud on all sides.
Your time has expired. The original DRA, please unmute yourself now.
Man, it's funny, Sean, when you're like, we just got to get people to stop driving and use the transit. Oh my gosh, see, this is the whole plan. It's so great. And you guys love your money. $5.1 billion. You guys are like, why aren't we getting that? It's so bad. We only get 290 million, but okay, well, we'll just deal with it. We'll still seek money though. And I love the task force. And you're like, I'm going to be on that. And it's like, okay, good. Cause it's just going to push the agenda even further. You guys are, real good at infiltrating and, incestually being on all the boards so you can make sure that the plan goes through. And yeah, so you're playing the game and you get the money. And so you're telling people that we're going to go to zero emissions. I don't know how you think that's possible when other people aren't doing it. And all of these electric vehicles, did you know their footprint just to make it is creates more GHGs than it saves in its lifetime? but whatever, as long as we're telling people that it's going to save the planet, because we need to do that at all costs. It doesn't even matter if these batteries are totally combustible and can't be recycled. And all of these charging stations, they emit radiation. It's great. Tons of it, right? Especially when these cars are plugged in. Can you imagine a bus? But who cares, right? We have to go to get
8
people
seconds
to
left.
stop driving. I mean, that's what it's really about. It's not really about being truthful and logical and, honest about what's going on. It's about putting people in 15-minute cities and making sure that they are slaves. So it's good. You're doing very well. Just keep lying to people and you'll get exactly what you want from them and deserve from God. So it'll be good. Anyway, yeah. I don't know. Maybe we
Time
should
has
all just
expired.
stop breathing.
That concludes public comment, Chair.
Thank you very much, Clerk. We will now open board discussion on this item, beginning with Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp.
Thank you so much, Chair. First, let me thank you for the presentation. Thank you so much, and Ms. Cooney for those remarks. I have been talking about that since 2019, and we have a lot of frustrations with the state, but this is definitely good news. We get a lot of unfunded mandates, but it's good to see this additional funding coming, even with some of our frustrations. And so looking forward to seeing what the task force will come up with. I've talked a lot about, this, we do have to limit our conversations around fare box recovery. And so that type of reform and even the discussion of that will I think help us expand to provide a lot of the services that we talk about here. So I just wanted to note that I'm looking forward to the conversations that emerge out of the Budget Development Committee in September. This is very, very important. I just have one question about the estimated 290 million and the 4 years. You indicated that the majority of the money would probably come in the first 2 years. Is there a percentage breakdown at this point?
Yeah, when we say vast majority, I think it's close to 90% of the money will be in the first 2 fiscal years.
Okay, so we have a little bit of time to decide. Okay, thank you again. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem. Let's hear from Member Donovan and then Member Moreno.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the update. Just a quick question. I was wondering, how does this estimated amount of funding we're going to get in FY24 match up with what we included in our budget?
We didn't include any of this in our budget.
Oh, good. So this is all
Brand new.
gravy.
Gravy, except we don't know what the strings that are going to be attached
I
to it.
see.
So that's what we're hoping to get this next month in August.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Donovan. Member Moreno.
Thank you for the presentation, and I want to congratulate and thank Sharon on her advocacy work in the state of California. I hope that you are on the Transportation Task Force, so you can push the San Diego MTS agenda at the state level to make sure that we absolutely get the funding that we deserve down here. Thank you to Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp. I think you were talking about this way before I even understood what what any of this was. So what TDA did and all that good stuff. So my questions are primarily, and as the budget chair, we are looking at a budget deficit. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it's in the 2027 is when the budget deficit starts.
Yes.
And if I recall, it was like $65 million, but I might get my
By then,
numbers.
it's about 57 right now.
57 mil, I was off 10 million. So absolutely, we will be utilizing these funds appropriately. But I think it's also an opportunity for this board. We have talked a lot about continuing our opportunity passes. That's something that I would like to see. Also, we have talked about potentially doing a bathroom study for MTS. That is also something that I would advocate for on top of the infrastructure that we absolutely need to do here at MTS. Regarding the task force, can you give us more information on who's going to sit on that task force?
Sure. So right now, they are noting that it would include representatives from transit operators, Caltrans, local governments, regional planning agencies, transportation advocacy organizations, labor organizations, academic institutions, both the Senate and Assembly Committees on Transportation, and other stakeholders as appropriate. So it will be quite large. They do not have folks identified just yet, but that will capture who will sit on that task force.
Wonderful. And I think this is really where I made a comment in a previous item. I think this is where LA and the Bay Area eat our lunch, right? They definitely carve out funding for their particular interests. And I think this is an opportunity that we have in the San Diego region to really push for San Diego eating everybody's lunch, right? Hopefully. So very happy about this. Congratulations. I can't remember the gentleman's name who represents us in the state of California.
Michael Pimentel.
That guy. We had a presentation at the budget committee a few months ago, highlighting this, and it's just really exciting to see. And thank you for the work on this. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much, Member Moreno. If there are no further comments or questions, I too will add my thanks and congratulations on the good news. Appreciate all the work that it has taken to bring this in. All right, we will move to item number 21, and that is Transit Security and Passenger Safety Department staffing options. And L. Styler will provide us with this presentation once you get settled in. Thank you.
So this is an informational only item, but we wouldn't, welcome any comments and feedback. This was something the board directed us to bring back to the board. And so it's really related to what are our options for staffing in our public safety side of the house.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, Al Styler, Director of Transit Security. Thank you for the opportunity to give this presentation. As Sharon just said, I was directed by the board to prepare this in response to the presentation that was done in May regarding the focus group in the survey. I'm going to talk briefly about our current staffing levels, some of our special units that we have, some of the challenges that are currently facing our department, and then some options moving forward to make us stronger and to create a better environment for our customers. I want to start off with our mission, vision, and values. I can assure you that every decision we make in our department is based on this. It is a part of every training opportunity we give to our people. It's a part of every promotional process. We make sure that this is embedded in our culture here at MTS. It's who we are, where we want to go, and the tools we're going to use to get there. This is our current department size on the management side of things. 2 new positions that were added this year are Professional Standards Manager, that's headed by Sean Donaldson. Sean makes sure that every one of our customer complaints is reviewed, investigated, the customer is responded to, and that any issues that we determine are addressed and corrected. And we also have a new crime data analyst, that's Jeremiah Johnson. With the work that Jeremiah does, we're able to use data-driven decisions for our deployment of our personnel. We currently have 56 field code compliance inspectors and 11 field sergeants. Just a reminder, our code compliance inspectors are not police officers. They're public officers, and they're very limited in their scope of enforcement authority. It's limited to the rules and regulations that were approved by this board of directors. We have 4 specialized supervisors, K-9, administration, a bus liaison, sergeant, and a training sergeant. We have 1 dispatch supervisor, and we're adding a 2nd supervisor in the beginning of August. And we have 6 specialized CCIs, 2 for K-9, 1 homeless outreach, 1 with our camp team, and 2 in our bus support team. We currently have taken 4 of our CCIs and 1 sergeant out of our deployment and put them into a passenger safety team, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as the presentation moves on. Intercon is our contract security partner. They are at full staffing right now. They have 201 right now. They staffed to 206 on their choice, just to make sure that the vacancies, they can have them covered quickly. And just as a quick note, I'm very proud of this and their work. for Comic-Con. The 4 days Comic-Con was here and the world was in San Diego. Not 1 hour shift was missed. They had full coverage the whole time, and it gave us the ability to provide better service to our customers and our visitors to the city. Our specialized teams is our K-9 team. These are explosive detection dogs only. We have 1 supervisor and 2 officers that handle K-9. Suspicious items, unattended items, they do station checks, use them often for special events. And proud to note that twice we've been asked to supply a team to provide security at the Super Bowl the past 2 years. And due to our connections with TSA, we were able to get 7 additional explosive detection teams down here to San Diego to help us during Comic-Con. These units came from San Francisco, Los Angeles, and I think we had an officer from BART came down too. Our homeless outreach team is Cynthia Rogers. She works with one of our TSOs and works closely with San Diego's Downtown Partnership and their unhoused care team. We only have 1 team. She works 4 days a week during the daylight hours. In 2002, when we started our partnership with the San Diego Downtown Partnership, it was a couple hours a week, and that was it. And starting in this year, 2023, we're able to get 4 days a week coverage with them, and you can see the amount of work that we've been able to do. You know, we've contacted over almost 1,300 patrons in need of assistance, able to use the Downtown Partnership's Family Reunification Program twice. We've had 28 times where people were approved for shelter and no beds were available. 28 times people were placed in shelters, and with the County Health and Human Services, we're able to get benefits for 37 of those people. Unfortunately, Downtown Partnership has a little bit of a staffing issue right now, so they haven't been able to partner with us as much as they have in the past, but I just met with them last week and we're trying to find alternatives to bring back that level. Our bus enforcement support team, we have 2 teams. Each consists of 1 code compliance inspector and 1 transit security officer. There's 2 shifts, but they only work during the day. We don't have any evening coverage. They respond to bus driver calls or complaints, repeated complaints, and they handle that. They average almost 3,000 bus stop checks every month. And we're covering, as you can see, we have 97 routes and almost 17,000 miles of bus routes that we're covering. In 2002, we contacted 573 patrons, met with almost 1,200 operators, responded to 265 calls for service. We've had some people take resource information from us, but most of the time when we approach people, they decline this information and just walk away from us. Our camp team consists of 1 code compliance inspector and 1 transit security officer. He works 4 days a week. This unit deals with camps that spring up on or near our property that can cause hazard to our operations. There's some property out in the river adjacent to our line that we have to partner with several teams to clean up this area. But you can see we work with local police, San Diego PD, Chula Vista, La Mesa, fire departments, lifeguards. When we address these situations, we try to make sure that we bring all the resources necessary to help the individuals. This is the work our camp team did in 2022. Again, 97% of the people that we met declined services from us. I spoke briefly before about a passenger safety team. This group started in February, and this is a response to what we consider victimless crimes. Oftentimes, incidents happen on our system that either the person doesn't want to report it, or if we don't see it in our presence, we can't take any enforcement action on it. By putting these officers in plain clothes, we're able to address those situations rapidly. Sergeant Attaboy, who heads up the unit, is there in front, and I'm proud to announce that he was just selected to represent us on the Transit Research Bureau. They're doing a survey and a study on fentanyl use on transit systems. Since May, they've ridden 1,100 trains, issued 6 citations for vandalism. These are incidents that normally we would not see. This could be somebody riding on our seats or slicing a seat. If we're not there to witness it, we can't take any enforcement action on it. Quality of life citations, narcotic citations. We had 2 assaults. One sexual assault actually happened on our plainclothes CCI while she was sitting on the train. Individual sat next to her and started rubbing her leg. We had uniformed officers in the next car, were able to come over and make an apprehension right away. Some of our other special details, we have our rider experience detail. Usually this team we deploy in response to complaints from customers in a local, in a specific area, we'll send them out to address it. Last year, we started a bike team, which is a big help, especially down here in the downtown area during Comic-Con when there's a lot of traffic, a lot of congestion. This team can get through 3 or 4 stations within minutes and respond to calls for service. And Operation Lifesaver, we have a team of officers that were trained through this national program, and they go to middle and elementary schools and deliver safety lessons for being in and around our transit system. They've actually been approached by some businesses. I think one of the businesses downtown here asked them to address some of their workers, and we went down and did a presentation for them. So we're expanding our reach into the public with that. So these are our current operations. We have 2 watches for the day shifts. One starts at 3:30, the other one starts at 5 a.m. Our night watches starts at 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. And then we have overnight coverage for most of the time when our system is down. We have somebody riding around the system, making sure our stations are still secure. Our code compliance inspectors and sergeants work 4-day schedules, 4 10-hour days. So on Wednesday, we have our overlap day, and that's a day we use for special operations and usually do most of our training, because we can divide our team in half and get them the latest training that they need. Quick look at our trolley system, 62 stations, 67 miles of track, approximately 4,000 trips a week, and we have over 3 million riders a month. And that's boardings per month. It's not 3 million different people. It's 3 million boardings per month. For deployment, our inspectors are assigned to a line, so they'll ride trains on a specific line, and we also have posts at San Ysidro and 12th and Imperial. And our security officers are assigned to train patrol stations, mobile patrols, and special locations such as our transit store and some of our bus depots. Just to put some things into perspective on the average, our inspectors ride about 4,500 trains, do about 77,000 onboard inspections, 11,000 in-station inspections. In a month, we get about 723 people that refuse to tap, conduct 5,439 station checks, do train step-ons, and issued approximately 400 citations. HHU is our handheld units. These are the devices our inspectors use to check someone's ticket to make sure it is valid. We started validating earlier this year, and we found that 3 out of 10 people that are on our system that have valid fare medium are not tapping. So 30% of the people, we have to validate and take that money off of their account because it's a pay-as-you-go type of system. Citations on a monthly average, again, 397 a month. We are a little bit heavier at night with personnel. That's why our numbers are a little bit heavier for the evening shift. So some of our challenges, first of all, crime reduction. Our mission is to provide a pleasant riding experience for our customers, and that's what we try to do every day. And it's been more and more difficult to do that. Customer perception of safety has decreased, and that was shown in our surveys and in the focus group. I ride the system all the time. I don't own a car. I live downtown San Diego, and I can see that perception, how it happens to people. I've been a rider of a mass transit my entire life. It's been my career. So things that I see on a system might not make me feel unsafe, but I could see how they can make other people feel unsafe. I was on a train going up to Snapdragon just yesterday, Tuesday night for the soccer game. When I'm up there, the train is getting more and more crowded. By the time I got to Mission Valley, It was just delayed at every station because of so many people trying to get on. And there was a gentleman sitting right next to me that was getting more and more and more frustrated as this was happening. And he was getting louder and louder and louder as this was going on. And I could see the families on the car getting more and more upset like this. Their perception of safety was changed due to his actions. He was no harm, he was no threat, but that perception of safety dropped because of his actions. So that's a challenge to reduce that. You know, fare collection is part of what we do. Enhancing our revenue collection is one of our challenges. And again, you know, we don't work in a silo. We're not in a vacuum. You know, the social issues that are facing our communities are facing us too. You know, homelessness, the drugs, mental illness. These are all challenges. We want to get more partners to help us deal with those issues. So the goal group is a light rail consortium that does benchmarking. And they meet often to discuss, you know, trends, best practices. And earlier this year, they did a survey specifically to discuss security issues in and around light rail transit station. It was an anonymous survey, so everything is lettered. There's no names, but I can tell you that we were F in the survey. We're group F. And out of this group, we're the only agency that has no law enforcement component to our security perspective. Matter of fact, I believe in the United States, we're one of the top 5 transit agencies as far as riders are concerned, and the only one that doesn't have its own or some contracted law enforcement presence in the system. What this survey showed is, you know, some of the barriers to improving security. First of all, we have an open system. You know, our system, many of our stations are sidewalk platforms. It's very difficult to keep that secure when people can come in and off of the sidewalk and there's no barrier to prevent trespassing. Funding and budgets has changed quite a bit. Staffing availability. You know, we've been lucky. We're a full staff. Well, next week we have 1 CCI leaving, but we're a full staff right now. But staffing for security departments has been very difficult. And finally, just changes in perception towards enforcement and changing strategies on enforcement. These security-related problems, nuisance and disorder, homelessness and loitering, drug and alcohol abuse. You know, a lot of agencies are talking about the same issues. In fact, I attended a peer advisory group, which was chiefs of police and security directors for transportation agencies throughout the country at the rail conference in Pittsburgh in June. And at that conference, my former boss from New Jersey Transit Police, you know, during an open discussion said, is anybody else seeing the antisocial behavior and unprovoked violence increase? And to a person, everybody in that room raised their hand. Chicago, Boston, San Francisco, Portland, you know, all these agencies are dealing with. We're not alone. You know, it's just trying to figure out solutions to these problems. So reimagining security. You know, we've been using a model here that's been in effect, I think, since the agency started. And that was 42 years ago. And the world's changed a lot just in the past 2 years. We've done a lot to, you know, change the way we do things with our specific teams, our camp teams, our outreach, but we need to make our riders feel safer. The easiest to accomplish and the fastest I think we could get done would be to expand our current department of code compliance inspectors. If we hired an additional 34 inspectors and of course increase supervision, so we'd have that out there, we'd be able to put more teams out on trains doing train rides. We'll be able to increase our outreach teams, add a evening bus support team, and I would like to increase that passenger safety team. We're getting a lot of positive feedback from customers when they see somebody smoking and all of a sudden, you know, a plainclothes officer steps up and uniform comes on and we're able to address that issue. We'd also need to create 5 dispatcher positions with more personnel out there. It would be important that our eyes and ears are increased so that we could handle that. And I think making them as MTS employees and get them California Post certified would make us just safer. Roughly the cost would be about, you know, $35 million a year. And there's a breakdown of salary and benefits for the CCIs and for supervisors. You know, some additional considerations, you know, more personnel means we need more administrative help and some more management. You know, I'd like to add possibly another assistant operations manager for the evening or some higher level of supervision with the extra personnel. Benefits to expanding, increased presence, and an increased presence will, I believe, increase our rider perception of safety. As I said earlier, I ride the system all the time. And I've been doing it a long time, and I feel I can take care of myself. But when I see somebody from my team step on that train, immediately my anxiety level drops. And I can imagine how it is for some of our other riders. We can do more customer service, assist more patrons, be a visual deterrent, and be there for safety reasons. Again, on an average, each field inspector will be able to do almost 1,600 HHU inspections. And if we're validating 30% of every inspection, that does have a financial gain for us. Be riding 81 trains and 47 step-on at stations. Other considerations, adding 34 people means more cars, more locker space, more equipment. So that's just items that we have to think about, going forward for this. When we start talking about law enforcement components, something that some agencies do is they contract with local law enforcement or county law enforcement to help out. The benefit of this, it could be less expensive than creating a department. We'd have to have some kind of consultant or a group come in to do a big study on this to see what it really would cost, but could be cheaper. I think seeing police will enhance customer perception of safety. We'll get faster response time. I know local police are very busy with what's going on, but we have incidents that happen that sometimes it takes a while for police to come, and the victim will just leave and not stay to make a police report. Our CCIs have been assaulted just this year already about 90 times. Many of that is for enforcement reasons, but it would be nice to get faster response if that happens, that somebody can come in and give us an assist there. And this could be implemented quicker than starting a police department. Challenges with contracting law enforcement. You're going to get who they send you. We're not going to be able to pick who we want. We'll teach them and we'll show them our agency mission, vision, and values, but they're not MTS employees, and they won't. I don't think they'll hold them as dear as we do. And local law enforcement agencies are having staffing problems now, so that could be an issue. This is just a really ballpark estimate cost. We just got some numbers from the Sheriff's Department for their current contracts. But with startup costs and everything, for a year, it would be about $85 million to contract with a, this would be the Sheriff's Department. But again, this was just an estimate, so we had some kind of idea what we were talking about. Creating our own transit police department. Personnel costs and equipment costs, I think would be similar. There's an idea of approximate salaries. Again, this is, high level look at it. You really need to get some kind of group or consultant in here to do a study and take a look at it for us, to give us an idea of what the ongoing costs would be. I know this is becoming a trend in our industry. LA Metro just approved their board to create a police department. Cat Metro in Austin has been at this process for about 1.5 years now and spoke about it at that peer advisory group meeting I was at in June. Considerations of your own police department: increased liability, possible lawsuits, increase in liability insurance, equipment costs, vehicle costs, more professional staff, deeper dive into backgrounds and certifications for our officers, buildings, armories, locker space. There'd be a lot involved with doing this. But the benefits is that it's our culture, our mission, our vision, our core values. We'll increase our riders' perception of safety. We'll be able to get to incidents faster. These officers will have one mission, and that's to support our riders, protect our riders and our employees. I won't have an officer on the 5 making a motor vehicle stop. His job will be to respond to these incidents. Our investigations will get priority. One of the biggest things in driving down crime is, quick and thorough and relentless investigations. Issues that are important for us may not be as important for local police. For an example, a repeated graffiti artist on board our trains or at our stations. That's important, we'd be relentless in that follow-up to identify the person and make an apprehension. It might not be a priority for local PD. And finally, the benefit would be we'd have more oversight and more operational control of this department than we would if it was a contract law enforcement agency. So I know that was a lot. It was like a 10,000-foot look at things. But thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Styler. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do. David Roger, please make your way to the podium.
Trolley system than we are. Last week, there were 5 San Diego PD police cars going the wrong way down C Street, chasing a trolley, and they pulled the shotguns out and surrounded it. And I mean, every day at the Fifth Avenue trolley station, we were told that it was closed from 1:30 to 4:30. If you took and removed the homeless people that sleep there and participate, I mean, there's so much going on. I mean, I was threatened in front of your officers by a person that we had a video of them beating their dog and nobody did anything. Okay, so I mean, this is really kind of outrageous. All of these nice numbers and stuff that you guys are talking about isn't the MTS trolley system that we ride on. This is, I'm really kind of blown away. And I ride trolley systems all over the world, and MTS is getting into third world country in people feeling safe on riding the trolleys. I'm a big guy and no one, I feel I'm never threatened, but I have friends that ride with me and they are scared. They refuse to because it's so unsafe. Had people fall down inside the trolley
30 seconds left.
from being drunk. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, maybe you guys ought to go ride the trolley system every day and see if he's riding the same one we are.
The original DRA, please unmute yourself now.
Everything you guys do is a mess. I like how you guys are saying transit security, passenger safety, but then you're just saying you want people to perceive to be safe. You don't really want to provide safety. You just want them to have a perception of safety. That is so terrifying. And I don't know how inspectors or other things will do that. And the reason why there's no law enforcement is because, you know, all of these people, many on this board and all the boards, you know, telling people to take a bioweapon and or they'll lose their job. And then we wonder why there aren't enough. And what a great way to bring in some outside source of law enforcement, right? Either you're going to create it. So it's like we're always just getting into a police state. And you always say it's kind of like for safety and whatnot. But really, when you get beat up by a sheriff or, you know, the police don't really do anything to help people, but they'll just, you know, go like opposite of what their oath is. You know, we don't need to be in a police state. And it's just sad that you're even just talking about this now when you allow children to ride alone and have been, and people aren't even safe, but yet you have all these plans to add more and more transit. And how are you going to keep the people safe? You're not going to do it to keep the people safe. You're going to do it to enforce things and bring about more, you know, just fear upon the people. Because if they're, you know, you're not going to protect them from something, but you'll enforce something and inspect them just to give them some kind of perception of safety. It's really bad because the way you guys do things, and it's like, what are you going to do with that $8.5 million? Give it to the sheriff or what? They beat people up and exonerate themselves for it. So it's really terrifying to know that you guys are going to bring in more and more police throughout the state.
Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
First, I 100% agree with the first speaker. Second, it's not a perception of a lack of safety, it's a reality. If you can't even admit or understand that, no wonder there's a problem. I'm going to give a personal trolley example. A guy talking to himself and waving his arms, looks to see if transit security's on. He gets off, but then he gets back on. He sits right behind me. Then he hits me in the back with his arms. I tell him off, he moves. Not long after, two guys get on, and it starts smelling very strangely, like drugs. It won't stop, so I move to the complete opposite side of the car. Right away, a guy starts asking me for my number in a really weird way, like a human trafficker. He said he needed a friend. Yeah, right. That was all only within 30 minutes. And what about the 90 assaults on the transit officers? Or the at least one sexual assault on public transit? Were these all just perceptions? I don't think so. Safety is a clear failure. So let's move on to the other mission statement of a pleasant public transportation experience. So where are the comfortable seats? Where are the clean seats? Sometimes where are the clean floors? How about some shade? How about the trolleys and buses being on time? Or having their time synced enough that people don't miss a connection and have to wait for 20 minutes? How about the trolley time signs having accurate arrival times? How about no crazy people being allowed on? There's only one employee available for homeless outreach. Not that it's MTS's job, but you
30
need a
seconds
lot
left.
more than that. But not being able to find placement for people in shelters because there are no shelters. Just ask Stephen, Sean, and Vivian about that one. They've only been making headway on the arrest of homeless people. There needs to be more security on the buses too. I know the buses are usually empty, but hey, if they're going to be running all day with only a few riders, might as well pretend to be a rider. And if you can't understand security, you need to be fired right away. If you don't really know what that means and you think it's perception,
Your
you need
time
to
has
get out of here.
expired. That concludes public comment, Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Clerk. We will now open the board discussion on this item, and we will begin with Member Dillard.
Thank you, Al, for the presentation. I appreciate all the information that you've provided us. I have a few questions, and given that I think I'm the newest member on the board, I might ask some stupid questions here, but I just don't know. So one of the things that you mentioned was the K-9 and that you received extra help during Comic-Con for the K-9. And if you could just clarify for me, we actually have, is it 2 or 3 K-9 here in San Diego County?
We have our own 3 teams. We have one supervisor with a K-9 partner and 2 CCIs with K-9 partners.
Okay,
The extra help we received was, we're part of the TSA. We get our funding for our dogs from TSA. And that's how we get selected to go to the Super Bowl. So we had a big event. We reached out to them and they sent partner agencies down to assist us with providing protection, for unattended devices, stuff in and around the system during Comic-Con.
okay. So thank you for that. In general, can you please describe how these dogs are used?
Yeah, sure. Well, mostly like for Comic-Con, it would be if somebody has an unattended package that's left in an area that's kind of suspicious, instead of, we clear an area and have the dog go, and the dog is trained to pick up explosive scents. So the dog will go, and if it does hit on a scent, it'll sit, and then we can call in, bomb teams to come and take a look at it.
Okay, so they're not really used for security outside of that?
They
like-
are explosive detection dogs.
Okay, so just strictly, okay, that's what I needed to understand. Thank you very much. And then on your, under your recommendations, on item 12, you had mentioned La Mesa and the, regarding the homelessness issue throughout the county. First of all, I just wanted to ask, because we're, getting a lot of success stories out of our home program. And I just wanted to make sure that if you did have any recommendations regarding the home program that you would like to give feedback to us on. We just recently added 2 more employees, which is amazing because we're, tight with the budget for the police department in La Mesa. And we know that the 2 guys that we originally hired were, doing an amazing job. And I just want to make sure that I stay on track with that. So it is a personal request to stay in,
They're fantastic. Whenever we have to work in La Mesa, they're fantastic. We are in contact with them all. So they've been great with us. Thank you.
fantastic. And then you also mentioned, I was trying to find it on their item, but I can't remember, but it was, you were listing a couple of things about things that you'd like to have added. One of them was partners. You mentioned partners. And I was just wondering, is there, as elected officials, is there anything that we can do to assist you with any local partners that we should be pursuing or talking to, or maybe working with you to get that help or assistance?
Yeah, we will, anybody that's willing to give some resources to help us here on our system, we'd be happy to. Our issue comes in that, our system runs through a lot of different jurisdictions, a lot of different neighborhoods, a lot of different areas. And many of the programs are specific to certain areas, so they're not allowed to go in between, like, there's some that can't come to 12th and Imperial. So for us, it's trying to piece together, some outreach workers that when we have an issue in a certain area, we can respond to it quickly. What makes us successful at Downtown Partnership is that we don't insist that Cynthia stay on a transit system. If she's working with her partners and they get called away to an incident, she'll go with them. I talked about it at the Public Security Committee earlier this year, but there was actually an incident that happened way off our tracks. It was on 3rd and G, where she was with her partner and there were two people experiencing overdose, and Cynthia was there and she had her Narcan. She was able to save them. So that's what makes us successful. Then we don't have silos, don't have barriers, and we're willing to go outside our jurisdiction to make a difference.
Okay, and then you also mentioned regarding, in item 3, you mentioned regarding law enforcement, how there's a significant delay when someone is perhaps assaulted and MTS staff is there, but they're waiting on the police. Have you had a chance to communicate with the chief of police in any city to see if there's any way that when these calls go out, that we get faster turnaround time?
Yeah, I meet regularly with the chiefs, speak to them often. They all get a copy of our weekly report. And it just depends on the time of day and the level of the call. Things get put into a queue. And if it's not an incident that's happened right then, it tends to fall lower down in the queue as opposed to an ongoing incident, and that causes a delay in the response. When you add to that, the staffing shortages, it just increases delays.
Well, I know that I've had regular conference with the chief of police in La Mesa, and one of the main issues for the delays, obviously, is the homelessness issue. And I'm hoping that we can make a difference with the 2 most recent staff that we just added. And hopefully your turnaround time, at least for La Mesa, will be quicker, we're hoping.
Chief Sweeney is a great point.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Member Dillard. Let's hear from Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp, and then Member Elo Rivera and Member Chavez.
Thank you, Chair. Al, thank you so much for the report and being very, very consistent in the mission since you got here. Thank you. I wanted to see if I'll start off just by asking you if you, based on the 3 proposals that you put forward in the report, do you have a recommendation or a preference?
So I don't think this is a pick one of the 3. I think this is a long-term approach to being sustainable into protecting our customers better. We start with increasing our staff so we have more visible presence out there. I can't measure what doesn't happen when we're there. I can put people in an area and I can see that things can rise or drop if they're not there. But I think we start with that, and then in the meantime, we contract with a department to give us some contracted law enforcement presence at the time while we're building up to start our own police department. So I think it's a long-term strategic plan for increasing safety on our system.
Okay, yeah, and I think a long-term plan, depending on what we do with these 3 options, maybe a merge, maybe, depending on what we end up doing. I just would prefer, when we're talking about a strategic plan, that we keep the principles, that we have. We have invested in outreach workers, in furthering those partnerships. We have the ambassadors. I think even with more security, I wouldn't want to lose what we've invested in, because I think that they have also played a role in getting to where we're trying to be. So I would just say that we also we continue to talk about infrastructure and additional lighting and cleanliness and the things that also make people feel safe. And provide safety. We know that when there is, lighter places are better than darker places, especially when we talk about women. We've had Circulate San Diego, I believe, come and present a study to us in the Public Security Committee about how women are feeling, especially at night. So I just want to make sure that we are keeping all of those things at the forefront. I think a yes and approach would be good here. And with regard to partnering and contracting out with the sheriff's department, I know that the sheriff's department and, the city of San Diego, the police department are still experiencing, a lot of vacancies. And so just the calls that they're getting in their own jurisdictions are lagging. So that would be sort of the issue there. And with regard to establishing our own kind of deputized department or police department, what I just wouldn't want to face some of those issues too. But we are having a conversation about bringing things in-house as well, just in general. We are having that conversation with our operators, bus operators. So, it might be something to explore. I would also, if we wanted to establish something like that from the ground up, just focus on diversity. We know that security guards, generally speaking, are a very diverse population, and police departments are not necessarily. And so that would just be something else to consider. But I know I'm aware that, with what we have in front of us, I'm definitely open to exploring the options more. We want people to be safe and feel safe on the line, and I definitely agree with that. Just don't want to lose the focus that we have in some of the other areas, because how we got here was we had I don't remember the agency that came out that did the evaluation, but we also were reacting to the community plan on homelessness, which showed us that when people received tickets on the line, once they were able to come out of homelessness and try to go get housing, that those tickets were impacting their ability to get housing. So what we don't want to do is be a part of that cycle and hinder people. But at the same time, folks have to feel safe on the line. So I'm just, willing to explore more, the different areas that we have before us now. But thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pro Tem. Member Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation here. I'll definitely appreciate all the work that went into this. The conversation thus far has been nuanced, and I appreciate that because that's what's required in order to provide folks with safety. We have a very, very diverse ridership, and as we often say at the city, what makes one of us feel safe may make someone else feel unsafe, and finding that balance is difficult. I certainly hope that we keep that in mind as we continue this conversation, because some of our worst missteps on safety, in my opinion, have come when we make assumptions about what will provide safety to everyone, dismissing the lived experiences of folks, and use a cudgel when a scalpel is the appropriate tool to address an issue. I also don't want to dismiss the safety concerns that folks have. It's really important. We've got a ton of constituents who ride transit. I've got family that rides transit. I want my wife and my baby to feel, when he comes, to feel safe on transit. But I think making sure that we have the right tools to address the issues that are arising, I think, is going to be really important. I'm curious, you mentioned that we are the only transit agency, I believe the only one that does not contract with.
In this survey that was done, we're the only agency that does not have any law enforcement component.
Do we have radically different outcomes?
Excuse me?
Are our safety outcomes radically different?
You know what, we're all dealing with the same issues. I don't have a breakdown of their crimes per person or things like that, but the issues, as the survey mentioned, it's all the agencies are dealing with the same issues regarding, nuisances, loitering, drug use, mental health.
Part of the reason I asked that question is because a lot of these issues are not issues necessarily for law enforcement to address. And I won't go too long about this, but I believe a lot of why we are where we are is we've not provided the appropriate resources and tools to address issues like mental health, to address other basic needs that folks have. And as a result, we're not making much progress on those issues. And we're finding that our law enforcement agencies are stretched too thin, and those folks are overworked and often not finding the work to be what they thought it was going to be when they pursued it. And I want to make sure we don't replicate that here at MTS. Just because we're not doing something that everyone else is doing does not mean that we need to do it if their outcomes are not better than ours. So one thing that I think is going to be really important as we continue this conversation is ensuring that we really do work with our MTS Community Advisory Committee, making sure that those folks who love transit, want transit to work, are weighing in on this conversation. And then the last thing that I'll say here is the need, I believe, to ensure that we expand the number of folks who are trained to work with people experiencing homelessness. I think that's going to be super, super important. I recognize that the services offered by MTS Security, I believe it's just security that's been offering the homelessness services and programming. There was a reference in the slides to offering of services.
We give resources. We give information on resources to the people that we encounter.
And who is offering those resources?
Our co-compliance inspectors, our
Right.
security officers.
So
When we're with Downtown Partnership, they have their unhoused care team who has more access to resources than we do. So when Cynthia is with that team, she's able to provide more outreach to people.
right, and so I think that's my point, is wanting to make sure that we're putting folks with the appropriate training and access to the appropriate resources in the position to offer those resources. A lot of what I've heard that is making folks feel unsafe, there's certainly some of it is illegal activity, but there's other activity that's just stuff that we're uncomfortable with, and we need to find the right way to address that. I will conclude by saying that I have real reservations about the idea of contracting with the sheriff's department, given a lot of the issues that they've had. I significant concerns about whether or not that would actually yield the results that we want. I think this is an incredibly important conversation. Just want to make sure we're inclusive of all the necessary parties. And lastly, that we do this in a measured approach consistent with what Chair Pro Tem Montgomery Stepp has been working on for years now, to step by step ensure that this is a more safe transit system for everyone who rides it, not just those who critique it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Member Elo Rivera. Member Chavez.
Thank you for all the hard work and for really listening to us, because we've been going back and forth, and as well at the Public Security Committee, and the focus group brought up a lot of concerns. I have just a few questions because my fellow board members have asked the right questions, and I've been actually just scratching off some questions. So what's the difference in numbers of how it would cost us to contract outside as to bring it inside in-house?
Like, we'd probably have to reach out to a consultant to really come in and look at the details on it. This is a high level view of it. The numbers that I gave you from the sheriff's department, just because that's a fix. We know what they're charging other municipalities when they're serving them, so that we know. You know, and I can give you a general idea of what salaries would be, because, you know, as other agencies are having staffing issues, we'd have to be attractive and competitive in order to keep and maintain personnel. So the known is what the sheriff's department would cost. you know, we'd have to just do a deeper look into some kind of consultant or survey to find out exactly what it would cost for our own police department. That's why it's a longer term kind of option.
And as we are very mindful that we need to be reliable, clean and safe also, I think the last polling focus group, the focus group that we heard the last time about how women, children, all these concerns, I think it shouldn't be an exception, but it should be the rule from now on, moving forward, security wise, or in general, honestly, in MTS. I think that after we keep moving forward, we need to keep on listening from the public. If we do something, I want to know how they feel, the users, how they feel, if it's working for them, what's not working for them. You know, we can generally get a pulse because the pulse we got from the last focus group was dead on. So I think that moving forward, we should be having these focus groups and getting this feedback from the users. And I've been bringing it up the last couple of meetings when we're talking about security. How are we mindful about the quick response in real time? Because I know we have panic buttons that I haven't located it on the trolley system, but I'm gonna pay attention next time. But I know there's no live feed for the driver, the trolley driver, as to where with the buses, it's immediate. But on the trolley, we really don't have a way to communicate or to know in real time what the issue is in one of the carts. So that's a question that I'm going to keep on asking. How are we discovering any issues that are rising in real time?
Well, we do have the emergency buttons on board each car by the doors that can be pushed, and it notifies the operator of an incident. And also our Ride Assured line where a person can call or text and it goes right to our communications center, we'll get a response. That technology, we're working diligently with our IT department to improve that. So it's even faster than sending a text. It'll be, you know, opening up an app and sending an alert through some kind of computer application. We're in the process of getting that done.
I mean, and I don't know how to phrase this, but I mean, keep in mind that we have a lot of elderly passengers, a lot of disabled passengers, with passengers in general with many requirements. Maybe it's just a thought moving forward in the not so far, maybe a near future, think about real-time camera systems where
As
we
technology approves, we can get to that, you know, just right now, you know, bandwidth, you know, to put a live feed, you know.
I know.
From every,
It's costly.
the technology isn't there, but it's something that we look at considerably often.
But again, guaranteeing the safety, you know, is a priority. We need our passengers to know that we're reliable and safe. And that's it.
Thank you, Member Chavez. Member Ortiz.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to wrap my head around calls for service on the MTS transit property and how that correlates with calls for service within the different jurisdictions. So if someone's riding the trolley and they call 911, let's say in El Cajon, from their cell phone, that would go to the El Cajon PD. Am I correct in saying that? Even though
It might not, you know, I called 911 right behind Petco Park one time and it went to the county.
okay.
So I think it depends from what tower or signal, whatever it hits off, and that's where the call will go to. And then it gets transferred from there once the person gets their location.
So with regard to understanding the calls for service on MTS's property, that situation could provide some confusion with tracking the calls for services with regard to where the incident's occurring on a trolley or on MTS property versus how those calls are tracked. Because obviously, if we're looking at law enforcement need, we're going to look at calls for service as a metric to determine where that need is. And so is there a process to track the calls for service that are happening on trolleys with gathering that data from the other municipalities? Does that make sense, my question?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And that's why this year we created a position of crime and data analyst.
Okay.
And what Jeremiah does is now we can, specifically know where incidents have happened and make appropriate deployment plans based on that, not just anecdotal information.
Right.
We have specific information. As far as real-time information, when an incident call comes in, once we get it, we know exactly where those cars are.
Got it.
So if I call in and I say I'm on car 4057B, call our dispatcher, get notified. We are right in the same room as our train operators.
Right.
And they can look on the board and see exactly where that car is
Right.
for our response times.
I would imagine moving forward with this discussion, even though I'm an alternate, keeping in mind keeping accurate data with regard to,
it's everything.
Yeah, to make the decision has got to be paramount to make a good decision, because if the calls for service are registering in the city of El Cajon or the city of La Mesa, but it's really MTS, and distilling that data to make sure you're getting accurate numbers has got to be important. And Board Member Chavez's questions were fantastic with the real-time emergency and cameras. I would think that's very, very good to leverage technology and data collection as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ortiz. I will say for my part that I really appreciate the focus on pleasant and safe experience for our riders. People who would ride transit won't if they don't feel like it's going to be a safe experience. I was taken aback by the number of our own employees that you said have been assaulted. And we need to be able to protect our employees and respond efficiently and effectively when our employees are assaulted. So I appreciate the direction that you're exploring. I think that there's a real interest to ensure that the conversation is thoughtful and inclusive going forward. I also want to say how much I appreciate the work of the homeless outreach team. MTS as an agency is working to do its part, and the number of people who have been connected with shelter and connected with benefits, a couple of folks who were reconnected with family members. I think that is really helping individuals and helping the situation. So thank you for all the good work. All right. Well, if there are no other comments or questions, we'll move along to item number 22, and that is a zero emission bus program and transition plan update. And we'll turn it over to Mr. Wygant and his team once he gets settled in.
Good morning, Chair Whitburn, members of the board. Again, I'm Mike Wygant. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here for Transit Services here at San Diego MTS. And I'm joined by Kyle Watley, our Manager of Zero Emission Project and Sustainability. And we've prepared a kind of an overview to give you some background on our transition plan and where we are and the performance and the great strides that we've made. So we're excited to present that. So just a little bit of history. Zero emission vehicles or reductions of emissions from vehicles in transit is not new. Originally developed in the late 90s was the urban fleet rule. Went into law in February of 2000, but that really set the roadmap for a emissions reduction strategy. It wasn't technology based so much as a reduction mandate for transit agencies in the state of California. It also set the path for us to go to natural gas. It wasn't too long after that where the fleet composition switched from diesel to natural gas. More recently, although zero emission vehicles were in the original urban fleet rule, it was at a pilot type approach for some of the biggest agencies, and it got deferred many times. More recently, in 2018, CARB, California Air Resource Board, approved an amendment to the urban fleet rule called the ICT, or Innovative Clean Transit Rule. It had the requirement changing from an emissions reduction strategy to a technology strategy, meaning that transit agencies, and again, it broke it up in small and large agencies, were to start to mobilize and integrate zero emission vehicles with the intent of meeting the governor's goal by 2040 of having zero emission vehicles in transit service. It is in play today. It went into effect on the 1st of January of 2023 this year. It currently exempts 60-foot and 45-foot and mini vehicles. But our transition plan that the board approved back in 2020 makes the assumption that those would be included. And I'm actually happy to report that we've even already taken delivery of 60-foot battery electric buses as part of an accelerated advanced approach by MTS. The requirement on the regulation has at the bottom here, it lists thresholds starting in 2023, 25% of your heavy duty vehicles that are in that particular grouping would have to be zero emission. And then in 2026, it moves to 50%. And then in 2029, 100%. And that those dates all line up with the 2040 goal, with the assumption that heavy duty transit vehicles typically have a 12-year life cycle. Again, as I mentioned, the board approved a pilot program to kind of get our feet wet and get our own data. It was probably one of the best decisions we made as it relates to ZEB. Give us a chance way ahead of the legal requirement to get some data here, because as we found, and a lot of agencies are found, the operating characteristic and the performance for zero emission vehicles can be very unique to your region. So in 2017, with your direction, we started the pilot. It involved 6 vehicles originally. Was primarily going to be run out of our IAD division, but through that process, we implemented charging infrastructure. You see it in the picture here in the top right, plug-in chargers at our Imperial Avenue division and our KMD division. And later then we even expanded that to our South Bay and our East County facilities. The battery electric buses, those first 6, actually went into service in December of 2019. We actually added 2 more vehicles to that original pilot program later on, again, to try to accelerate our path and get more information. At the same time, knowing that this was a legal requirement and we were trying to get ahead of it, we started, kind of master plan decision-making process for all of our divisions, knowing that South Bay was going to be, from looking at our vehicle replacement plan and another grant that came through later, it was going to be the first division to really get a larger scale of zero emission vehicles. So we started that plan to see what that transition would look like at that division and the impacts. We also, worked very diligently to develop our transition plan that the board approved in 2020. CARB also approved that plan, and I'll show a little bit later in the presentation what that looks like and what the end result and how that transition flows between now and 2040. The pilot program, in essence, was really designed for us to get data on things like how each route in our system, almost 100 routes in our system, how a current technology of battery electric vehicles would operate, how it would impact, our service, our schedule. We found varying results. The average route length in our system is about 150 miles, and trying to figure out which routes were conducive to the use of the limitations of battery electric compared to which ones were going to be much more of a stretch. So a lot of that analysis was done during the pilot with the 6 and then later the 2 additional vehicles that we got to really give us that data in our own region. Some of the other things that we've been working at, again, we have 5 operating divisions right now. We started the master planning for our Imperial Avenue division. And then I know a lot of you have heard about our Iris Rapid, or what's going to be our 227 route. That was relative to a grant that we received to expand our service and provide that through zero emission vehicles. And that's a 60-foot route, but we've started quite a bit of work, and you can see in this picture here, that's today at our MTS facility in South Bay. That is a state-of-the-art facility that doesn't exist anywhere here in North America. It is an overhead, when it's done, an autonomous charging application so that the vehicles can continue to be parked what we call mirror to mirror, bumper to bumper. We have a constraint at all of our facilities, but that is the first scalable facility like that in the US. We're very proud of it, but that progress is moving along every day. Where the 60-foot buses to support that new Iris Rapid are in delivery now. We have, I believe, 7 of them already. A few of them already been accepted. So we may actually see them out on the street here pretty soon for some on-route testing. They may show up at a few media events in the near future. The microgrid solution is also something that we're looking at as part of this transition. You know, with electric grid being the basis of the power that we're going to need to charge all of these vehicles, we're looking at ways to not only lower the cost of that electricity, time of use, having some redundancy, shaving electricity when it's more cost effective off the grid into storage and then using it when we need it. A charge management system. Again, we want this all to be autonomous. The theory is these vehicles would park in there. The drivers would bring them in the end of each evening. They would sit there and then based on when we have a pullout and when electricity is the most affordable, before the pullout is due, try to charge them to the point where they can make the next day's route. So this is not something we can just have people walking around pressing buttons and watching their stop clocks. We have to build a software system. It'll be the first in the country that can really analyze what our schedules look like and charge these vehicles in time for pullout. So I'm going to turn it over now to Kyle Watley. He's going to go over some of the performance as it relates to the pilot vehicles and the vehicles that we have today. And I'm happy to report, I think we're up to almost 500,000 miles on zero emission vehicles. And from 2019, that's quite a big accomplishment.
Yes. So thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Watley. I'm the Zero Emission Vehicle and Sustainability Manager here at MTS. So I'm going to dive into what our updates been for our Zero Emission Bus program overall, and more specifically about the performance of what we've been seeing with the vehicles this last year, and then also the infrastructure as well. So to jump right in, fleet efficiency is obviously a big one for us here at MTS, not just for our conventional fleet, but also our battery electric. Just to note a couple things first, as you see total miles, that's anywhere the bus goes, not just when it's in service, but it could be doing an event, training, maintenance, et cetera. The other side of efficiency, actually, the way we look at it from battery electric compared to CNG, it's actually, they're quite the opposite of each other, just to note. So battery electric, it's energy consumed per mile. So the lesser the number means it's a more efficient vehicle. Whereas CNG or conventional vehicles, it's miles per gallon, miles per therm. It's, you know, the higher the number is a more efficient vehicle with that. So diving into the data, what we've been seeing overall is about an average of 2.2 kilowatts per mile for the electric buses. Kind of give you an idea where that stands, you know, back early analysis by CARB, actually before the ICT regulation kicked in, they used a standard of 2.3 kilowatts per mile. So that was about 6 years ago now. So it shows we're right within that realm. So that's really good to see. The other thing you're starting to see here is actually our efficiencies normalizing just overall. So what that kind of alludes to is that, yes, there are environmental factors that impact the efficiencies of these, and the first one being driver behavior is actually that. So we're starting to see the drivers become much more comfortable with these vehicles, and it's actually optimizing the efficiency with that. Next slide. So we also look at it by route, specifically only when it's in service. We call this revenue miles. What we've been seeing is about an average of 2 kilowatts per mile for that. So again, the driver behavior does impact that, because these are specifically for our operators that are highly trained in this vehicle and technology, and you're seeing it optimize the efficiency even more with that training. So that's a positive, at least for that. There are other environmental factors, sensitivities though with this. As you can see, that's why there's a variety of efficiencies on there by route. So just to name a few, some of them are topography, which is hills, have a pretty direct impact. Freeway speeds are a huge one. Unfortunately, it negatively impacts the range ultimately of these buses. And then a unique one really is the temperatures or microclimates here, even in San Diego, do have a direct impact to the efficiencies of these vehicles. Next slide, please. So since it's unique, we really wanted to dive into that a little bit more and to understand how this impacts the efficiency. So we looked at efficiency versus temperature here. And really what you're seeing on that, that dotted line there, the trend is as the temperatures get colder or hotter, these vehicles unfortunately become less efficient for us, meaning less range. So our example here is that red dot on the right. That's actually the vehicles we deployed at our East County division. During the summer months, as it's hot, just as right now, these vehicles become less efficient. So as the temperatures have been rising right around 95 degrees, the average efficiency is 2.9 kilowatts. So that's almost a kilowatt of less efficiencies on these vehicles, just as the temperature increases for that. Next slide. So ultimately, the goal is what's really the range limitation of these vehicles. That's what we're trying to understand, those trends. And then obviously we want to compare it to what our conventional vehicles have. So that's what you're seeing on this graph here is really what it's saying is unfortunately CNG still goes about twice as far as what a battery electric can do, at least with the existing generation of buses that we have. So meaning that if we had to swap today to 100% zero emission, it wouldn't be necessarily a 1-for-1. At some level, we would have to unfortunately put 2-to-1 to meet that demand. But with that said, the technology has been advancing. So even just this last year, the energy density on batteries has increased some, meaning ultimately we should hopefully see that gap bridge a little bit. But we won't really ultimately know until we actually procure the next generation of bus to kind of get an idea what that's at. But we are seeing some path through that. So just to reiterate, efficiency summary, environmental factors are definitely directly impacting these vehicles at this point in time. I just named the 4. So really we're showing about an average range of 130 miles daily. And as Mike mentioned, we average about 150 overall. So we definitely have some room as we could deploy some more of these vehicles as long as that technology is advancing appropriately as well. But overall, it's a max threshold of we only put them on 150 miles or less at this point. And that's also limited to the amount of routes available under that threshold at each division. So that kind of pencils out what we could do in terms of daily mileage. So obviously the big one here is also operational cost. We look at it in comparison to CNG, but we're directly looking at the fuel and maintenance cost of this. So in terms of how we compare it, it's, we're looking at all CNGs. That gives us a variety of fleet series ages to compare to. We also do it with the newer CNG, which is closer to the battery electric age comparison there. And then we also split the actual battery electric manufacturers because there's so many sensitivities to this. We want to understand that not just the efficiencies, but also the operational costs of them as well. So looking at the combined cost here is really kind of the highlight. CNG average over, this is the 3-year period of what we've been collecting data for the battery electrics too, just to note, about $1.50 cost per mile compared to the battery electrics $1.33. So this has actually been a really big positive for us this last year, especially, meaning that at least in terms of the electricity has been much more competitive as a fuel source for vehicle types generally. And largely unfortunately is because there was some pretty high inflationary costs to natural gas that kind of helped make electricity more cost effective. But that's just kind of where we're at right now. But just to highlight, note a couple things here. So you're also seeing some discrepancies, at least by the bus manufacturer, New Flyer and Gillig, in terms of both cost, electricity, and the maintenance costs. I just wanted to note that. So we put New Flyer in about 1.5 years before the Gillig buses. And during that time, it was on what they call a standard utility rate case, which unfortunately had some of the highest cost components to it. So that's what's driving that cost up just a little bit. Since then, once we put the Gillig buses in, we've actually SDG&E and all utilities in the state of California put out what they call electric vehicle utility rate cases, which actually help mitigate some of those high cost components in there. And we're actually seeing it. As you can see, 62 cents compared to that 94 cents on average is actually a pretty big positive for us in terms of operating costs for that. The other thing is you're seeing it, at least for the New Flyers, the maintenance costs higher than the Gillig battery electric. That's really because since we put it in about 1.5 years before, some of the warranties are falling out of that right now. So we're seeing those major cost components go up with that. We're going to expect the same with the Gillig here, probably in the next 6 to 8 months too, but I just wanted to point that out. But overall, this has been a really good positive for us. So availability is obviously another one we want to understand, especially with both of these technologies. So we want to make sure the chargers are readily available to charge the buses, and then the buses are readily available to go out into service each day. So overall, it's been a very good positive of this. But for the chargers, it's for the 12 standalone plug-in chargers that we installed during the pilot. They've been about 90% on annual average readily available to do that. So that's been a pretty big positive for us to get the buses out there. In terms of the buses, they're actually pretty much right on par with our CNG fleet right now. They're averaging about 75% readily available compared to about 75–80% of what our CNG fleet is right now. I would say the Gillig's the only thing here that you see some dips in that graph, just to note, because when we first got those, they definitely had some issues that needed to be worked out. It wasn't even just specific to the energy storage systems or that technology, it's just multiple factors. But for the last 6 to 8 months, I think they've actually been right there on par with our New Flyer buses. So overall, this has been a really big positive for us this last year. All right, so a little bit about our program summary. I want to just highlight some positives, what we've been seeing over the last year. So positive experiences, what we hear from our passengers is they appreciate how quiet the bus is. I don't know if you've been able to have a chance to get on the bus, but it is really quiet. And especially at a stop, you really don't hear it when it's on. It's actually pretty amazing. You may hear the air conditioning system, but that's about it. The other thing, our internal staff that drive them, not just our operators, really appreciate the drivability. Obviously, we saw that from them getting more familiar and having our fleet, optimizing the fleet efficiency on it is a big area where we're like, this has been great for us. Technology advancement, just to go back to battery density, just to give you an idea of what that has been increased, 10% this last year of energy density increase. So the technology is definitely advancing, and this is going to be good for us, especially as we deploy more out and that they can maybe meet more of our range demands within our system. Overhead charging design. So as Mike mentioned earlier, we got to minimize any potential parking loss as we're transitioning to this. So the overhead charging system does optimize that for us at each of our sites since they're all site constrained. The other obvious is to automate the system as much as we can. With plugins, you have to go out there and physically plug it in, plug it out during a charge session, but especially more so when you're trying to troubleshoot it. So we hope to eliminate some of those procedures with automating that system with the overhead design. Hydrogen, as you all know, actually our transition plan calls for a mixed fleet. So we're going to include some hydrogen at some point as well. The one positive we did see with this is the 40-foot buses did come down a little bit in cost this last year. I think it's the only vehicle type that did overall, so this was a big plus. And our obvious big benefit is zero tailpipe emissions. There's literally no tailpipe on these vehicles, which is nice. So as we deploy more of these out into our communities, we get to take advantage of that. Unfortunately, there's been some lessons learned through the process. Obviously, we're always tracking costs. This is a big one. So for 40-foot, we're still seeing a discrepancy. It's about $400,000. Battery electric buses are more expensive than a CNG right now, as you can see, averaging about 1.2 million. The other side of this is a new operating cost. So as Mike mentioned, the charge management system, or as we call our CMS, does have a cost to it. It's 1.5 for potentially 7 years of that system. Now, with that said, what we're trying to also do is obviously streamline this because each charger manufacturer technically has their own onboard monitoring system. And as we deploy more chargers, since we already have 2, we don't want to complicate that by having to open multiple platforms. So that charge management system is going to streamline that process, as well as be able to allow us to manage and monitor all divisions as we install them. Charging limitations. So we are seeing an average charge time of about 3.5 hours to charge these buses. So that is a big discrepancy compared to our conventional fleet. That's something we're definitely going to have to work more toward as we're deploying more of these vehicles, especially fueling them. So a CNG, just to give you an idea, is about 8 to 10 minutes right now. So definitely as we get more closer down to the 2030 line, and we have more of these vehicles, we need to really understand how to manage that. Programming and integration, these are really big talks nationally actually right now, because programming, there's a lot of communication standards that are going between the bus to the charger. We need to make sure those are efficiently working together so we don't have any charge session errors. Unfortunately, there has been some, but with more standardization, we can think to hopefully eliminate a lot of those issues and discrepancies. Integration, just to give you an example. So as we implement this charge management system, a big piece to optimize the efficiency of charging is integrating with our existing systems. So just an example would be our scheduling. So HASIS, unfortunately, that hasn't been done quite yet, but we have definitely seen that there is the capability to do so. We just gonna have to do it through the commissioning process, which we're hoping to do here in the next year. Lastly, unique infrastructure design. So obviously, as Mike mentioned, we're the first, to at least in the terms of scale, of implementing the overhead charging system here. However, with the utility has some programs that we're benefiting from right now. One of them is a cost subsidy from that. Unfortunately, overhead charging wasn't part of that program at the beginning. So there have been things that aren't part of the rebate program. We're hoping as we continue down this that they can start to include it. So zero emission bus deployment obviously is a big one. When we first, did it for the pilot, it was really pushing it around to as much service area as possible to understand those environmental factor sensitivities. Since then, we're really just focusing on prioritizing the infrastructure. Obviously, we need to get that infrastructure in order to deploy the vehicles. So the map on the right really just showcases when we're installing the infrastructure, and this is based off our bus fleet replacement plan that we do year in and year out. Obviously, once we get everything installed and ready, our plan is to specifically only put zero emission buses primarily on disadvantaged communities serving routes as we move forward with this progression. And then lastly, a proposed CTAC site or Clean Transit Advancement Campus. This is going to help us during this transition period because obviously, especially down the later years, we're going to be taking a lot of real estate just to install the infrastructure. If we can get that CTAC site in there before 2029, that'll help us in terms of those constructions because we're going to have to mobilize and move fleet around to appropriately operate it. So to jump into the infrastructure, there has been a lot going on. As I mentioned, prioritizing this infrastructure is very key in order to deploy it. So just a high level go through it by 2029, we're looking at potentially being able to charge 160 battery electric buses with the schedule right here, as you can see. So a lot is going into this overall. But like I said, just to reiterate, Division 6 is really required for this post-growth as we construct more of it. Here's just a couple of photos of what we've been doing already with our commissioning process down at our South Bay site. So this is a mock-up. We needed to do this in order to really start and create the template of installing this infrastructure, but just wanted to showcase that. So South Bay Maintenance Facility, obviously a lot going on here. We're installing 24 overhead chargers right now. So obviously this is going to be our biggest testing phase for what this overhead charging system is going to look like. And as Mike mentioned, also we're planning to include a microgrid solution to this. So holistically, in terms of the design, this is really how we're going to be able to test it overall. Imperial Avenue Division, we're moving forward with this too as well. So we've already completed master plans there. Our first phase of this will be in 2025. We're going to be including 30 positions as well for this. And then obviously, since this is our most site constrained yard, there's going to be some very drastic design elements that we're constructing here. And as an example, would be such as a parking deck to implement. So we try to minimize that parking loss as much as possible. So Kearny Mesa, East County, the real things that I want to kind of highlight here is that between Imperial Avenue and South Bay, there's a big thing that needs to happen is utility coordination is a big one right now. So fortunately, we were able to have the capacity for that power demand that we need at each of those sites. However, for Kearny Mesa and East County, we do not have those. So just in terms of schedule, it could take up to 2 years to get power to those sites where it hasn't taken that for at least Imperial Avenue and South Bay. And I'll kick it over to Mike. That includes my proportion. Thank you.
All right, so a couple times we've both mentioned CTAC or the Clean Transit Advancement Campus, formerly known as Division 6. So we have identified a location. I think you guys have been up to speed on that near Federal and 47. You know, it is going to be very unique. It will be 100% ZEB day one. It's a lofty project. We have received some funding, but we continue to get additional funding and continue to look for more. We have gotten through a couple of big hurdles with the environmental aspects, whether it be the NEPA or the California version of the EPA certifications. It will be a design build from Sandag with a lot of input because we'll be the operator. You know, with funding, we're looking to have this place up and running by 2028. But as Kyle had mentioned, it really is a big key part of our transition because as the footprint is such a restriction at all of our facilities, once this place opens up, it'll give us a chance to shift vehicles and give us a little room to have bigger construction projects or accelerate construction projects at the existing facilities while we still have continuity of operations throughout the region. Speaking of funding, it's always a moving target, but as of today, we have done I think an exceptional job with nearing $60 million worth of money specifically for MTS towards this, kind of a laundry list of different places that we've gotten it from LC Top with our pilot program. A lot of money has come in through the HVIB program for the vehicles. We were one of the few agencies in the state to actually successfully get some HVIB money for some charging infrastructure. They no longer allow that. And it ranges per bus and per piece of equipment. We continue to apply for those with every zero emission vehicle purchase. With TIRCP, we've received quite a bit for the IRIS and then for overhead design and infrastructure at a couple of different divisions. SDG&E has been a huge partner through this. We've been meeting with them since 2017 to talk about this, way before the regulation, about the concepts, the needs. We meet with them monthly to really kind of go over the status of where we are, what our needs are. They get these presentations, you know, several times a year, so they're not taken back by our approach or what we're going to need and when we're going to need it. We've received money from the Community Project Funding Program, Energize or CEC, VW mitigation. That's another area that we've been getting funding with, or trying to get additional funding with California. Unfortunately, with all the success, there's been some areas we need to continue to push through with the low-no grant on the federal side and the bus facility grant programs. Julia gave a really good overview on the budget on the state level, and it is truly a moving target. Initially, we were seeing some pretty significant reductions across the whole budget in the state, but specifically as it went towards ZEB, the initial elimination of $2 billion from the TIRCP was huge. That has been most recently restored. But in the end, we're still seeing a little bit of a shortfall compared to prior years as it with the HFIB program and LC Top. So we'll continue to work through that. But the good news is right now we have managed to, with our grants department and our finance team, scrape together the money to get that infrastructure, which is the key part ahead of the transition. Once you get the vehicles, that's actually the easier part, but building the infrastructure in time and the integration with the utilities, I can tell you there's a lot of transit agencies that have gotten vehicles and nothing to charge or nothing to fuel with. So we've done a great job so far. This slide, for some of you, may look a little bit familiar. This was the original transition cost assumptions back in the 18-19, and then once it was approved in 2020, the transition plan. But basically, it was looking at the baseline. I noticed a little while ago there's actually a typo in one of these, but if you look at the totals for the baseline, the 1.8 billion, that's the money we would have spent to continue to buy CNG from now to 2040. And so across is an incremental adjustments. The board chose in 2020 that what we call the 25% accelerated path for our transition, meaning we got a couple of vehicles early as part of the pilot program. We tried to accelerate where we could, and we originally had a delta, that's the incremental baseline down there, of $667 million of additional needs in 2020 money to meet that transitional goal by 2040. The next row, which is the most recent cost estimate, is 3 years later. Basically inflation or things that have panned out slightly different, slight adjustments or increases. But it just kind of gives us an idea where we are based on our original assumptions. Some other upcoming milestones, we just kind of real quick, the charge management, that's a big part of this. The ability to really manage the grid, manage the schedule, make sure we make pull out every morning. And it's an autonomous approach that is integrating with our existing systems. So this will be the first of its kind, and we're excited about it. We have a lot of people watching us to see how it works out. As I mentioned, the 12 battery electric buses are inbound now. 7 of them are actually at South Bay. We get another one tomorrow. We're expecting to have all 12 in place, ready to start commissioning or finishing the commissioning of the overhead system by August or September, with the hope that we're going to start IRIS in October of this year. We got the NEPA clearance. The KMD master plan is almost done, and we're in phase 1 design for IAD right now, with the hope that it'll be done later on this year. Again, these are just each year where we're going to be with our vehicle purchases through the budget process, and when we're buying roughly 50 a year, we'll be getting 10 to 12 until 2025, and then it jumps up to basically 25 per year or half, and then by 2029 we'll hopefully have all the infrastructure in place that all of our vehicle purchases will be zero emission. This is just a chart that kind of shows that transition over the year. The blue would go into hydrogen, and then the green is a battery electric, and you can see as we're getting away from combustion vehicles with the tan. Just a final recap, there have been some challenges. COVID got us like everything else. The impact with components, especially electronics, as it has to do with some of the components with the infrastructure, switch gears, switch boards. The vehicles have had multiple delays, not too bad. I think we're about 6 months late on the delivery of the 60-foot bus, but at the same time, we've had equal or even larger delays with the infrastructure components. Out of the team's, really control, it's really what's available in the market. But again, we're on this mixed fleet approach. Kyle had mentioned we're going to have hydrogen in our future at some point. So as we build these plans for each division, we have a footprint for hydrogen. And it's a kind of a balanced approach that allows us to pivot. We're not getting too far ahead of ourselves with the infrastructure, with the assumption that maybe things will change. Right now, hydrogen is not the best approach fiscally. It's about 3 times more expensive to operate it on a cost per mile just for the fuel alone. The infrastructure itself is actually a little more affordable, but it's also a different color of money there. We've been pretty successful in getting capital money. The operating cost is a little bit of a different story, but eventually we will be in the hydrogen mix. And again, there's another picture of the South Bay facility. A couple things before we go into questions, I just wanted to mention out is, MTS has done, and kudos to Kyle and Heather's behind me back there and her team and the support of our CEO and the board. We have become leaders in this industry. If you haven't figured it out, do a little research. We have almost weekly visits from huge transit agencies, not only in the country, but outside of the country. We were just entertaining New York Transit, New York MTA yesterday. They had a whole constituent of people here to really look at what we're doing and kind of learn from it. The biggest convention for zero emission buses in the States is called ZebCon, and San Diego was selected, and we'll be here in September. Really, I think a lot because of the work that the team's done. Kyle and I are lucky to sit here and kind of take some credit for it, but it really is a much bigger team than that, and a lot of them are behind us. So just wanted to mention that before I open up those questions.
Thank you very much. Before we go to board discussion, I'll ask if there are any public comments.
There are phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, I forgot to mention Monica in the last item. Credit to you on the homeless shelter failure too. Okay, now a zero emission bus transition plan program. With San Diego County paying the highest electricity rates in the entire country, about 3 times the price per kilowatt hour of anywhere else, how does having electric buses make financial sense? Add in the maintenance price for these buses when MTS can't even stay afloat without the state providing debt dollars. But I see the excuse. The California Air Resources Board and Governor Newsom is making us. We have to, or we're not going to get the money, and then we're going to be sued. It's just pathetic. And what's going to happen when a bus runs out of the expensive and dirty electricity? Mike said the charging station needed doesn't even exist. Riders are definitely going to be stranded even more than they already are. And with electric buses being quiet, pedestrians are not going to hear them coming, which is going to result in more injuries and deaths. And as I pointed out earlier, mining for lithium, the same as coal, is toxic for the environment. And the lithium batteries are highly combustible. If an electric bus gets in an accident, chances are high that the bus and everyone in it, if anyone, because they're usually empty, is going to blow up with a fire that can't be put out easily, emits toxic fumes, and can reignite. But even if that incident is avoided, once the battery life comes to an end,
30 seconds
it's not
left.
recyclable. And the lifespan of lithium batteries is very short. So we're going to have landfills stacked with batteries soon. I agree with Mike, though, that this is a technology strategy, a strategy the state knows will destroy both the environment and the economy, but will help implement the stupid, smart surveillance cities where everything can be shut down as simple as an electronic kill switch. The reality, not perception, is that green is the new red. Deal with that
Your
one.
time has expired. The original DRA, please unmute yourself now.
COVID sure did get us, right? Oh, man, I mean, can you imagine if people really find out that's a total hoax? It's crazy. We got to keep them believing it's not, because then the money, we can still use the excuses and whatnot. It's good. I'm wondering what different color of money you're speaking of too, because it's like I'm kind of interested in seeing if we can, get some of that. And then, it's so interesting because I'm glad you didn't put in there anything about the health effects of these electric vehicles, because we really don't want people to know the truth about that, because if they did and they knew they were being radiated, I mean, could you imagine people would not want to do this whole agenda, right? So it's good that we hide that from them. I mean, and then imagine though, when you have that overhead charging station, because this is like the Tesla of buses, right? And it's like just with the Tesla and it's plugged in, I mean, off the charts radiation. So like imagine those buses and then the radiation that's coming off of those charging stations while it's under there. I mean, let alone just while the drivers are riding the bus and the people. I mean, we can't have them know that. And we don't want them to know that they could potentially, start on fire and just basically have it not be put out. I don't even know what you'd use to put out a bus fire like that. I guess we just let it burn, right? I mean, because, and then we make up some other excuse because it definitely isn't the lithium batteries. We don't want people knowing those types of things. I mean, because can you
30
imagine
seconds
if our
left.
agenda didn't continue to be, pushed, that like if we didn't continue to get money to push this? Oh, I mean, it's good. I mean, yeah, it's so smart. And I'm wondering if there's even a like EMF, reader that would like be able to read the amounts of radiation coming off of that. I don't know. Hopefully they don't make one, because can you imagine if people really understood what was going on and that they're actually being
Your time has
microwaved?
expired. That concludes public comment.
Thank you so much. Any board discussion on this matter? Seeing none, I just have one quick comment. Well, thank you so much for this comprehensive presentation. Just for CTAC, because it's going to be a design build, I think that gives us a little bit more discretion to work with some of our smaller businesses to construct, help, be a part of the construction process. So I would just throw that out there right now, and then we will follow up on it at a later date. But thank you very, very much for the presentation. So we are going to, we won't be able to hear items 23 and 24 at this meeting. We will continue those to the next meeting. I would turn to our CEO and see if there's a report.
No, I just wanted to say, enjoy the summer. The rest of the summer, I should say, and we'll see you all in September.
Great. The same to you. Thank you so much. Any board member communications? All right. So we had no trailing public comment. Do we have trailing public comment?
Yes.
Apologies. Let's go there.
Phone number ending in 3731. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Yeah, you do have it. It's me, Truth. For the record, both my non-agenda comment and my consent comments were skipped last meeting. And now the speaking time has been cut down from 3 to 2 minutes. It's ridiculous. I'm going to be there in person right when you least expect it. And I'm going to record my own video of the meeting. On Tuesday at the La Mesa City Council, I heard Patricia bragging about how many people rode the trolley during Comic-Con. This goes for all of you. Temporary Comic-Con riders don't count as legitimate ridership, and neither do unaccompanied children riding for free. And the homeless people sleeping on the trolleys also don't count. But I don't blame anyone for sleeping in the AC versus tents on hot asphalt in the dead of summer. Despite that, I would request that the future Purple Line go past Kearney Mesa up to Miramar College and Mira Mesa, as they have no major transit connection, only buses. I don't know about the land feasibility, but I think that would be a useful addition. It would make more sense than an extension to Del Mar, especially if the point is to attract more riders and provide needed transit for different areas. But let me offer some harsh facts. Sandag Deputy CEO Colleen said the average trolley speed is a snail speed of 20 miles per hour, not even remotely close enough to be competitive with a car. However, I know that the trolleys often go 5 miles per hour due to repairs and electrical failures. Here's what else I learned from the Sandag June 23rd agenda packet, quote, MTS fare box recovery rate, 21%, end quote. Translation, only 21% of people are actually paying for public transit rides.
30 seconds left.
According to an article from the Eno Center, quote, in 2019, the 50 U.S. transit agencies with the highest operating expenses had an average fare box recovery of 36%, end quote. This non-payment is a trend across the country. The reasons include a decline in society's ethics, a feeling of unfairness as some adults or children ride for free, the feeling that safety is not taken seriously, and disappointment in the inefficiency of the service with long wait times and no accurate updates. Perception now doesn't care
Your
about
time
women.
has expired.
That's what I
That concludes public comment.
Thank you so much. Excuse me, there's one more public comment, I believe, on your, Mr. Moore, did you have a sheet? Hold on, just let me make sure we have the
Yeah, we put the sheet in.
everything we
over here.
need.
All right, I'll be real short. I know everybody's ready to get out. I'm Will Moore, the new Policy Director and Counsel for Circulate San Diego. Came to introduce myself and talk a little bit about open loop payments. I will be very brief. Circulate's mission is to create excellent mobility choices and vibrant, healthy neighborhoods. At the next meeting, September meeting, we're going to be talking about the open loop payment systems. Those are sometimes called open loop. They're sometimes called the way we pay for everything by tapping your card and such. We have 3 recommendations. Riders should be able to pay for fares by tapping their bank cards or mobile wallets as they enter their MTS ride, whatever that ride is. Riders should be able to register their bank cards and mobile wallets on their transit accounts. And this will enable the 3rd recommendation where MTS's existing fare capping and free transfer systems and programs should extend to riders using bank cards and mobile payments. So that's it. Thank you very much.
That concludes public comment.
Okay, great. You definitely don't want to leave anyone out. So thank you everyone for participating in this process. Our next meeting date is September 14th, 2023 at 9 a.m. This meeting is adjourned.